Chapter 901, The First Peak of the Five-Element Sect. I can't believe that we have such a terrifying inscription formation in our five-element sect. At first I thought that having the concept fragments would already make the concept comprehension speed fast enough, however, looks like this speed is nothing compared to being in the profound assimilation formation. It's crazy. It's too crazy. Why are there so many abnormal inscription formation in the cloud continent? However, although this profound assimilation formation is powerful, it's not something that anybody could easily use. After all, you need to at least use up hundreds of concept fragments every time it's activated. Although I've been in the five-element sect for so many years, it's no wonder that I've never heard of this profound assimilation formation before. I think the cost of consumption would be kind of unbearable for our five-element sect. The profound assimilation formation will be activated after 10 days, looks like the sect is going all out this time. The 10 young disciples who can enter the formation are indeed very blessed. After the group of five-element sect's disciples found out about the functions of the profound assimilation formation, they went crazy over it. Looks of envy immediately shot out of their eyes and landed on Duan Lingtian, Nangong Chen, Nangong Yi, and the few others. They knew very well that the 10 young disciples who had demonstrated outstanding strength today would have a brand new transformation in the concepts that they had comprehended and might soar up to the top 10 days later. 10 days later, the profound assimilation formation, I can't wait to see that. Tian Zhen, the son of the Peak Master of Earth Peak, had also walked out from the shadow of defeat with his eyes shining brightly. This time, my target is the 7th level intermediate water concept. The eyes of Tan Huan, the direct disciple of the Peak Master of Water Peak, also lit up immediately. Strong confidence could be seen in both of her eyes. Although her cultivation base had currently reached the 6th level void interpretation, in terms of her concept comprehension level, it was only at the 5th level intermediate water concept. The profound assimilation formation, 10 days later, I must comprehend the 9th level intermediate fire concept. I can no longer allow the Nangong twins to keep pressing on my head. Hu Fei, the direct disciple of the Peak Master of Fire Peak, had a cold look on his face. A cold sneer was lingering on the corner of his mouth. And that Duan Lingtian. I'll make sure he suffers from the utter misery that he wishes he's a dead man one day. With this thought in his mind, Hu Fei swept a cold glance at Duan Lingtian again. Although they were a huge distance apart, Duan Lingtian could still sense Hu Fei's cold eyes on him. He could feel a chilly air running down his back. It was icy and frosty. Hu Fei, I'll give you a surprise 10 days later. A hint of an inconspicuous smirk was playing by the corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth. At this moment, he seemed to have become the master who had Hu Fei's fate in his hands. 10 days later in the profound assimilation formation, Duan Lingtian indeed would have the ability to become the master who determined their fates. After all, that profound assimilation formation was created by the Rebirth Martial Emperor. He was no different from the true Rebirth Martial Emperor since he had the memories of the 2 reincarnations of the Rebirth Martial Emperor. When the five-element sect's senior officials and disciples present on the scene finally dispersed, all they could talk about was the profound assimilation formation. As for the Battle of the Five Peaks, it had already been temporarily forgotten. After all, the profound assimilation formation was just too terrifying. Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu left the scene and returned to Wood Peak along with Qi Yu, Yang Ling, Ke Zheng, and Chen Wei. On the way back, Chen Wei sighed, I've been in the five-element sect for almost 20 years, and this is my first time hearing about that profound assimilation formation. Duan Lingtian, Daniu, the both of you must work hard once you've gotten inside it, okay? Don't worry. Daniu grinned. This time, I'll surely comprehend the 8th-level intermediate Earth concept. Who knows, maybe my character will have a sudden boost, and I'll be able to comprehend the 9th-level intermediate Earth concept immediately. The 9th-level intermediate Earth concept? The moment they heard Huang Daniu's words, even Qi Yu the Peak Master of Wood Peak could not stop the smile that crept up on his mouth. They felt that Huang Daniu's ambition was just too huge. Duan Lingtian could not help but laugh wryly as well. Did this Daniu really think that the profound assimilation formation of the five-element sect to be that crazy? According to Duan Lingtian's estimation, after 10 days when the five-element sect activated the profound assimilation formation, the concept fragments that would be placed inside had to be some low-grade fragments. If a martial artist used these concept fragments on its own, he would be able to comprehend the concept over a long time, and the elevation would probably be huge. However, when they were placed in the profound assimilation formation, they would be used up very quickly. Just one fragment would not have much effect on a martial artist. It mainly relied on the quantity of the fragment instead. This was also the disadvantage of the profound assimilation formation. It used up too much concept fragments. Only if several hundreds of pieces of 7th level concept fragments are placed inside would the effect be completely different. Anyhow, even if the 5-element sect only puts in some low-grade concept fragments into the profound assimilation formation, I still want to use this to help elevate my 4 concepts rapidly so that my strength will be upgraded to a higher level. Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed brightly as he made up his mind. He was absolutely confident in this. With my current spiritual energy, although I dare not say that I'll be able to fully steal over the control of the profound assimilation formation, at the very least I can still tamper with that formation, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. If Duan Lingtian's thoughts were heard by the senior officials of the 5-element sect, they would most likely be shocked to the core. In fact, the profound assimilation formation in the 5-element sect's gold peak was actually arranged by a martial monarch stage inscription master who was hired by the 5-element sect many years ago with a huge amount of money. However, right now, Duan Lingtian, who had yet to step into the void transformation, was thinking about tampering with the formation. If that martial monarch powerhouse found out about this, he would most probably be so worked up that he would throw up blood in agitation. After they returned to Wood Peak, Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu went their separate ways from Qiyu and the rest before going back to the 3-story pavilion where they currently lived. Big brother Duan, big guy. The moment Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu approached to the pavilion, they immediately heard a familiar voice. On the balcony of the 2nd floor of the pavilion, a young girl was waving her hand at them with a bright smile on her face. It was Yi Zan who had come together with them to the 5-element sect a while ago. Little Zan, Duan Lingtian greeted Yi Zan with a smile after he and Huang Daniu walked up to the balcony on the pavilion's 2nd floor. Hee, lassie Zan, you're a little frustrated not being able to go watch the Battle of the 5 Peaks with your own eyes, huh? Huang Daniu grinned. It's a pity that you couldn't see your brother Niu's, my super elegant demeanor. What a pity. Humph, who wants to look at you? Yi Zan scrunched up her nose and snorted. Then, her gaze instantly landed on Duan Lingtian as her eyes shone brightly. Big brother Duan, how are the results? Not bad. Duan Lingtian smiled. Not bad. Yi Zan was stunned. She was obviously confused. Lassie Zan, with Duan Lingtian and I making our appearance personally, do you really need to ask about the results? If we couldn't let the Wood Peak be the first peak of the 5-element sect, we would be too embarrassed to come back, okay? Huang Daniu laughed loudly. That's a bluff. Yi Zan had a stop lying to me look on her face. She continued, don't think I don't know that in the past of the 5-element sect, the 4 peaks, wood, water, fire, and earth, had never once been able to defeat Gold Peak in the battle of the 5 peaks to become the first peak in the 5-element sect. Well, there you go. You just said it yourself. That was the past of the 5-element sect. What if I tell you that today, the history of the 5-element sect has been rewritten? Huang Daniu continued to laugh. Rewritten? Yi Zan was taken aback. She could slightly sense that it did not seem like Huang Daniu was playing a joke on her. However, she still refused to believe him. Instead, she turned towards Duan Lingtian, who was by the side, because in her heart, Duan Lingtian was the only person that could convince her completely. She believed him unconditionally. What Daniu said is true. When Duan Lingtian saw Yi Zan turning over to look at him, he smiled and nodded. Little Zan, from today onwards, the Wood Peak that we're in is already the first peak of the 5-element sect for the next 3 years. The first peak of the 5-element sect. Naturally, Yi Zan believed Duan Lingtian. However, she was still stunned. Although it had only been a short while since she joined the Wood Peak of 5-element sect, she still knew very well what the first peak of the 5-element sect actually meant, and what it actually signified. From today onwards, Wood Peak would replace Gold Peak and become the first peak of the 5-element sect for the next 3 years. Not only that, all of this was actually all thanks to the 2 people standing before her. She could not suppress the excitement in her heart at all. Big brother Duan, please tell me in details about what happened at the Battle of the 5 Peaks today. In actual fact, Yi Zan felt very regretful that she was unable to witness the Battle of the 5 Peaks with her own eyes. It was unfortunate, but there was nothing she could do about it. After all, she had yet to enter the void prying stage and was not able to hover in the air yet. Let Daniu tell you instead. Duan Lingtian smiled. Big guy, hurry. Yuzan turned towards Huang Daniyu and scowled. Excuse me, lassie, you call Duan Lingtian, big brother Duan, but you call me, big guy. Don't you think that's a little impolite? Huang Daniyu narrowed his eyes, but the smile on his face still remained as he asked slowly. If you still refuse to tell me the story, I'm going to set fire to your room down when you're cultivating next time. When Yizan saw how Huang Daniyu was trying to take advantage of the situation to make a request, she glared and threatened him immediately. When he realized that he was being threatened, the smile on Huang Daniyu's face froze before disappearing completely. He really feared that Yizan would do such thing when he was in the midst of cultivating. Putting aside the fact that he did not have the heart to do anything to that naughty and mischievous Yizan, Duan Lingtian would never agree to it even if he really did have the intention to do something to her. Fine, you're the boss. Huang Daniyu shook his head and then roughly told her about the story of the Battle of the Five Peaks today. He started the story by excitedly telling her how valiant he was. Lassie Zan, you didn't see it at that time. I sent Hu Fei flying with just one punch, you know. Yeah, you're the best. Yi Zan snorted, but you're still no match for the Nangong twins from Gold Peak. Looks like the reason Wood Peak became the first peak of the five-element sect for the next 3 years is all thanks to my big brother Duan. It has nothing to do with you at all. Lassie Zan, you can't say like that. Even if Duan Lingtian did not make an appearance, our Wood Peak could still become the second peak of the five-element sect for the next 3 years. When Huang Daniyu saw how Yi Zan dismissed his hard work with only one sentence, he immediately turned anxious. See, you said so yourself. Second. Can second be compared to being the first? Yi Zan continued to say as a matter of course. Not only that, with Big Brother Duan's innate ability, even if you weren't in the team battle, Wood Peak can still obtain the first place, right? 901 Chapter 902, 10 days later. Yi Zan's words left Huang Daniyu totally dejected. Indeed, even without him, Duan Lingtian would still be able to help Wood Peak obtain the glory of getting the first place in the Battle of the Five Peaks with just his strength alone. Alright, Duan Lingtian interrupted and smoothed over the dispute when he could no longer stand it. Today, Daniyu defeated Hu Fei from Fire Peak, you know. Moreover, he also helped avenge Elder Yang, and he also demonstrated a splendid opening performance for Wood Peak. His contributions cannot go unnoticed. The moment Huang Daniyu heard this, a smile immediately appeared on his face again as he cast a proud look at Yi Zan. Yi Zan, on the other hand, rolled her eyes and did not even bother to take notice of him. Let's get back to our cultivation, Duan Lingtian sighed helplessly. He looked at these two funny fellows and bade them goodbye before leaving to return to his room. After returning to the room, Duan Lingtian sat cross-legged on the bed and sensed the origin energy in his body that had undergone a transformation. He could not suppress the brilliant smile that crept up on his face. 7th level void interpretation. At the time of the breakthrough earlier, everything happened in a blink of an eye. It was so fast that he felt like it was merely a dream. Not only did I make a breakthrough to the 7th level void interpretation, I've also reached the bottleneck leading up to the 8th level void interpretation. Soon enough, I'll be able to make another breakthrough to the 8th level void interpretation. Duan Lingtian's heart boiled with excitement when he thought about this. He was not able to calm for quite a long while. My cultivation base has made a breakthrough, my spiritual energy has also leveled up, way ahead of my concepts. However, my concepts will have a new breakthrough as well 10 days later. Duan Lingtian's face broke out into a smile again when he thought about the profound assimilation formation. From what he could see, that profound assimilation formation was exactly like a timely rain. Just when the concepts that he had comprehended was in decline, an opportunity came knocking on the door. 10 more days. If I can make another breakthrough to the 8th level void interpretation during these 10 days, it'll be amazing. Duan Lingtian did not hesitate anymore when he thought about this. Hastily, he shut his eyes and started to cultivate quietly. 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Sword Dragon Form. The origin energy in Duan Lingtian's body began to get agitated. Although it managed to drive a small dose of the rebirth pill's medicinal efficacy, the medicinal efficacy was no longer as tyrannical as it was previously. I've used external origin and spiritual energy to stimulate the medicinal power of this rebirth pill, and now it has become like a bird that gets startled by the mere twang of a bowstring. It would be almost impossible for it to be stimulated by these same methods anymore in the future. Duan Lingtian was very clear about this. Unless he consumed the spirit fruit so that the medicinal efficacy of the spirit fruit could help catalyze the medicinal force of the rebirth pill, he could only elevate his own cultivation base so that the medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill would be more apparent and improve his cultivation base faster. Duan Lingtian's current goal was to make a breakthrough to the 8th level void interpretation within these 10 days. However, as proven by fact, this was merely a goal. A dream would always be beautiful, and reality would always be harsh. After 10 days, the bottleneck that led to the 8th level void interpretation in Duan Lingtian's body did not budge an inch at all. Duan Lingtian, a familiar voice resonated by his Duan Lingtian's ear and woke him up from his cultivation. He could not suppress the sigh that came out of his mouth as he murmured, "Sigh, looks like I'm too greedy. Unless I have a spirit fruit with me, I'm afraid I'll probably need at least 2 to 3 months to complete my breakthrough otherwise." "It's already been 10 days. Duan Lingtian asked curiously as he opened the room door. He saw Huang Daniu outside the door. "You really forget the time when you cultivate, huh? Today's the day we're going to Gold Peak to enter the profound assimilation formation. The Peak Master is already waiting for us," Huang Daniu laughed. "Let's go." Duan Lingtian nodded his head and rose up to the air along with Huang Daniu. Within seconds, he saw Qiyu who was already waiting in the sky. "Peak Master," Duan Lingtian greeted. Qiyu nodded and smiled in response, "Let's go." Before Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu could respond, he lifted up a hand. A vast majestic and invisible force immediately swept out and enveloped Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu. Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu's faces changed colors instantly when they sensed the powerful force that was pressing down on them. In the next moment, they sighed in relief when they noticed that the power that shrouded them quivered, but it did not hurt them at all. "We're here," Qiyu's voice entered their ears at the same time. When they narrowed their eyes and looked ahead, the mountain peak before them looked familiar somehow. Both of them were equally stunned by this. "G Gold Peak?" Huang Daniu asked, his mouth was agape. Just a moment ago he was still at Wood Peak, but he was already at Gold Peak in the next second. Although the distance between the two peaks was not too far apart, Huang Daniu was still completely taken by surprise when he was transferred here in just a blink of an eye. What a tremendously fast speed! Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes as he exclaimed in surprise in his heart. This Peak Master of Wood Peak was definitely not just at the 9th level void transformation. He had most likely reached the peak of the void transformation. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to possess such a speed. "We're slightly late," as if sensing something, Qiyu smiled nonchalantly and led Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu to the platform on Gold Peak's hillside. Duan Lingtian followed closely behind. When they reached the gate of a huge palace on the platform, he finally knew why Qiyu had said so. At this moment, apart from Guo Chong, the sect leader of the 5-element sect and his 2 direct disciples, the peak masters of water, fire and earth peaks were already inside the palace. There were 2 young people standing by each of their sides. Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu walked side by side behind Qiyu into the palace. At the same time, Duan Lingtian looked around curiously at the surroundings. He discovered that the inside of the palace was filled with inscription aura. It was obvious that the palace was covered with many inscription formations. "Huh," Duan Lingtian suddenly raised his brows and looked at the spacious high platform inside the palace. On that high platform, Duan Lingtian's spiritual energy could sense a hint of the familiar aura of an inscription formation. This was naturally the first time he personally sensed the aura. The reason why it was familiar was because the rebirth martial emperor was familiar with this formation. Duan Lingtian would undoubtedly find it familiar since he possessed the memories from the 2 reincarnations of the rebirth martial emperor. The profound assimilation formation. Duan Lingtian had never thought that the profound assimilation formation would actually be inside the palace. He could not help but immediately feel excited about this discovery. "Humph, Qiyu, you and your Wood Peak disciples sure are haughty. How dare you let the sect leader wait for you?" Cha Bai, the peak master of Fire Peak, immediately swept a cold glance at them and started mocking them the moment they entered the palace. "Cha Bai, looks like you've forgotten the pain of your healed wounds, huh?" Qiyu smirked in disdain, "Or perhaps, I've shown you too much mercy the last time. If you really want it, I can always let you be bedridden for several months." A threat, a bold and conspicuous threat. Cha Bai turned pale and green at once upon hearing Qiyu's words. Although he was enraged, he did not dare to do anything. "Sect leader, why you see, how dare Qiyu step on your head now?" Cha Bai took a deep breath. He knew that he was no match for Qi Yu. Instead of having a direct conflict with Qi Yu, he turned to Guo Chang and complained in anger. Unfortunately, Guo Chang ignored his complaints and nodded towards Qi Yu before saying, "Since all of us are here, let us begin. The 10 of you will go up to the high platform over there and sit down cross-legged. After you've settled down, you'll take out the concept fragments and start your comprehension process. 15 minutes later, I'll activate the profound assimilation formation," Guo Chang announced unhurriedly as he swept a glance across the 10 people, including Duan Ling Tian. "After the profound assimilation formation is activated, I'll put in several hundred pieces of concept fragments. At that time, these fragments will be absorbed by the profound assimilation formation and transform into concept energy that'll help you elevate your concept quickly. As to what extent they'll be elevated, well, that'll depend on your own comprehension and good fortune," Guo Chang finished in one breath. The moment he finished his announcement, Nangong Chen and Nangong Yi who were by his side instantly flew upwards to the spacious high platform in the palace and sat down cross-legged with some distance between them. Whoosh, 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 within seconds, the 6 people from Water, Fire and Earth peaks had also gone up to the high platform one after another and sat down in a cross-legged pose. Hu Fei narrowed his eyes as his chilly gaze swept across that purple figure in the distance. He finally closed his eyes while he held a piece of fire concept fragment in his hand. He cleared his mind and started comprehending immediately. Tan Huan from Water Peak and Tian Zhen from Earth Peak also shut their eyes one after another as they began to comprehend their concepts with the help of the concept fragments. The 3 other young disciples from the other 3 peaks also closed their eyes one by one. "Daniyu, let's go." Duan Ling Tian ignored Hu Fei's icy glare completely as he called out to Huang Daniyu before flying towards the high platform in front together. However, an inconspicuous smile was playing at the corner of his mouth. The smile contained hints of conspiracy in it. Soon, Duan Ling Tian and Huang Daniyu also sat apart in a cross-legged pose. Within seconds, Huang Daniyu entered the comprehension state while he held a piece of earth concept fragment. He turned a deaf ear to everything around him. Duan Ling Tian also shut his eyes and began to comprehend. However, there were 2 concept fragments in his hands at the same time. They were the wind and thunder concept fragments. It was a good thing that Guo Chang, the sect leader of the 5-element sect, and the other 4 peak masters did not notice this at all. Otherwise, they would be startled by it as well. In Cloud Continent, they had never heard of anyone who could rely on 2 different concept fragments to comprehend 2 different concepts at the same time. 15 minutes had gone by without a sound. In the eyes of the peak masters of the 5 peaks in 5-element sect, the 10 young people on the high platform had already entered the comprehending state. However, they did not notice that in actual fact, there was one person who did not enter that state at all. That person was none other than Duan Ling Tian. "It's going to be activated soon." Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath. He was a little excited. He was waiting for the moment the sect leader of 5-element sect would finally activate the profound assimilation formation. Only then would he be able to integrate his spiritual energy smoothly into the profound assimilation and do the things that he wanted to do. If he passed up this opportunity, he would not be able to tamper with the profound assimilation formation anymore with his current spiritual energy. 902 Chapter 903, The Soul Skill is Gone. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Suddenly, Guo Chang, the sect leader of the 5-element sect made his move. He lifted a hand as 4 origin stones that were glistening brightly shot out and landed on the 4 corners of the spacious high platform. Almost instantly after the 4 origin stones landed, the entire high platform burst out in a gush of white fog and started to shroud the 10 young talented people on the platform. It was obvious that was an inscription formation. Or more accurately, the profound assimilation formation. Swish! Almost instantly after the 4 origin stones had landed on the 4 corners of the spacious high platform, the spiritual energy that had accumulated in the mind of Duan Ling Tian, who was sitting cross-legged on that high platform, suddenly burst out. In just a second, the spiritual energy extended out along the various materials that formed the profound assimilation formation and merged with the formation seamlessly, like a fish in water. Okay, done. Now, let's wait for the several hundreds of concept fragments. As long as these fragments touch the profound assimilation formation, it'll immediately be refined and transformed into concept energy. Generally, people who are in this formation will not absorb more than 1% of the concept energy. However, with the current opportunity that I have, along with the Rebirth Martial Emperor's understanding of the profound assimilation formation, I can get around 10% of the concept energy to elevate my concept comprehension. This was exactly what Duan Lingtian was aiming for. It was not that he did not want to extract all the concept energy that was refined by the profound assimilation formation, but he could not do it at all. 10% was the limit that he had estimated with his current spiritual energy. After all, his spiritual energy was only at the 8th level void interpretation. It was still quite weak in the face of the profound assimilation formation. The requirement to arrange a profound assimilation formation was to have at least spiritual energy at the martial monarch stage or above. Just with his meager spiritual energy, it was already amazing that he was able to snatch 10% of the benefits under the nose of the profound assimilation formation. All of this was thanks to the rebirth martial emperor's thorough understanding of the formation. Otherwise, let alone snatching the benefits under the nose of the profound assimilation formation, just the act of merging his spiritual energy with the formation was already almost impossible. Duan Lingtian, who was waiting patiently, suddenly seemed to have sensed something as his eyes narrowed immediately. At the same time, he could clearly sense that a wave of unknown spiritual energy was rushing towards him without any warning from the inside of the profound assimilation formation. It ascended along his outstretched spiritual energy as it charged back towards him, all the way to his soul. Shit! Duan Lingtian's expression changed instantly. There's a rebound formation hidden in the profound assimilation formation. Damn it! The rebound formation was a passive defense type non-recurring inscription formation. It was usually hidden inside a formation. It was a formation inside a formation. Normally, this rebound formation would not have any movement. However, once an inscription master's spiritual energy had merged with an inscription formation that contained a rebound formation, this rebound formation would immediately be triggered and become something like a mirror. The inscription master's spiritual energy would be replicated and reverted back to him all the way to his soul and hurt his soul. Naturally, the condition was the spiritual energy of the inscription master who left behind the rebound formation must be stronger than the intruder's spiritual energy. Otherwise, the rebound formation would not be triggered at all. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was faced with an attack by the spiritual energy that was equally as strong as his own spiritual energy. That wave of spiritual energy charged all the way towards the soul that was in the depth of his mind. Although this level of spiritual energy was not enough to destroy Duan Lingtian's soul completely, it could still inflict a heavy damage on his soul. Wham! The spiritual energy was very fast. Just as Duan Lingtian figured out what was going on, it had already crashed on his soul viciously. It was as if it wanted to smash and break his soul completely. Without any warning, Duan Lingtian's soul quivered for a moment. It made Duan Lingtian lightheaded immediately and he was barely conscious. It was to the point that he almost unconsciously retrieved the spiritual energy that had already merged with the profound assimilation formation. Fortunately, Duan Lingtian was able to respond in a timely manner and took back control of his spiritual energy. He managed to stop it from leaving the profound assimilation formation. Everything that he had prepared and done today would become useless if the spiritual energy left the already activated profound assimilation formation. That was not something he wanted to see. Just as Duan Lingtian thought his soul would suffer a certain amount of injury, he discovered that his soul was completely safe and sound. The spiritual energy that had come crashing towards him earlier had also disappeared without a trace. What's going on? Perplexed, Duan Lingtian instinctively used another wave of spiritual energy to perform a check on his soul. After Duan Lingtian checked his soul, he was so shaken that his heart almost stopped beating from fear. The soul brand is gone. Duan Lingtian was stunned. He was completely bewildered. The soul brand that was in the depth of his soul, which was also the foundation for his soul skill 1000 illusions, had completely disappeared from his soul. Without the soul brand, he could no longer use the soul skill 1000 illusions anymore. That spiritual energy, it must have destroyed my soul brand. It's also because the soul brand blocked that spiritual energy that my soul's still safe and sound. Duan Lingtian easily figured this out. However, it meant that he no longer possessed the soul skill 1000 illusions without the soul brand. In the future, he could no longer use his soul skill 1000 illusions to confront his enemy, and he could no longer create that mysterious illusory space and wrap his opponents around his little fingers. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was extremely upset and very heartbroken. The soul skill 1000 illusions had accompanied him for a very long time. All this while, it had saved him from many crises and had given him the ability to defeat the strong. It allowed him to defeat many martial artists who were way stronger than he was. However, at this moment, the soul skill 1000 illusion was no longer there. It had left him for good. Suddenly, Duan Ling Tian's spiritual energy quivered for a second and startled him. In an instant, the fact that his soul brand was destroyed, and the soul skill 1000 illusions had disappeared along with it was temporarily placed at the back of his mind. At the same time, he could clearly feel the originally serene profound assimilation formation had become agitated. Needless to say, he could guess the reason why the profound assimilation formation started to become agitated. Guo Chong, the sect leader of the five-element sect, was finally going to throw several hundreds of concept fragments into the profound assimilation formation. I can't change the fact that my soul brand and soul skill 1000 illusion are already gone. What I need to do now is to seize this opportunity and make my four concepts soar up to the top. Duan Ling Tian quickly adjusted his feelings as he looked forward to the arrival of the several hundreds of concept fragments. He knew very well that without the soul brand and the soul skill 1000 illusions, he was nothing in front of the group of five-element sect young talented people, let alone the Nangong twins from Gold Peak. Even Hu Fei from Fire Peak could crush him easily. Hu Fei was at the 7th level void interpretation, with a comprehension of the 7th level intermediate fire concept. As for himself, 7th level void interpretation with a comprehension of 3rd level intermediate wind concept. The rest of the 3 elementary concepts added up together did not even exceed the strength of 10 ancient horned dragons. How could he compare with Hu Fei then? Even if he used the quasi-royal grade spirit sword, he was still not a match for Hu Fei. Although he was unwilling to admit this, there was no other option for him other than to admit it. Without the soul skill 1000 illusions, to a certain extent, he was merely a useless waste who had a cultivation base yet weak in strength. For this reason, he had to seize this opportunity this time. If he did not seize the opportunity this time, he would definitely be stepped on by Hu Fei. Was he willing to be stepped on by Hu Fei? Of course not. This time, I must utilize the profound assimilation formation to gain strength that would allow me to defeat Hu Fei and that Nangong twins without the help of soul skill 1000 illusions. Duan Ling Tian's heart was full of longing and endless desire. Duan Ling Tian's movements were completely shrouded by the profound assimilation formation that had transformed into a blanket of fog. All of the peak masters in the five-element sect did not notice anything at all. At this moment, Guo Chong, the sect leader of the five-element sect, who was also the peak master of Gold Peak, was standing before the high platform. In the space in front of him, several hundreds of concept fragments were hovering in the air like it was being held up by an invisible force for a long time without moving at all. Among these concept fragments, there were green, red, blue, purple and khaki colors. The 5 colors of the fragments represented the 5 concepts of nature: wind, fire, water, thunder, and earth respectively. They were the fragments that corresponded to 5 different concepts. Of course, other than these 5 colored concept fragments, there were another 2 concept fragments that were emanating a powerful aura. Subtle light could be seen gleaming on the surface of these 2 different concept fragments. A part of the light solidified into a sword while the other solidified into a saber. They were the sword and saber concept fragments. However, the sword and saber concept fragments were much fewer in number when compared to the fragments of the 5 nature concepts: wind, fire, water, thunder, and earth. Do any of you have the concept fragments of sword and saber? I remember that the 5th level void interpretation disciple from Fire Peak comprehends the sword concept, and the 5th level void interpretation disciple from Earth Peak comprehends the saber concept, Guo Chong asked slowly as he looked at the other 4 peak masters. From his words, it was obvious that he found the amount of sword and saber concept fragments to be too little. I have 23 sword concept fragments. The lowest grade one have is at level 1, and the highest is at level 4. Cha Bai, the peak master of Fire Peak, lifted his hand up and took out 23 pieces of sword concept fragments. I also have 21 saber concept fragments with me. Tiangu, the peak master of Earth Peak, also took out 21 pieces of saber concept fragments. As for Qi Yu and Tan Huan, the peak masters of wood and water respectively, they did not show any sign of actions at all. The peaks in the 5 elements sect were originally in a competitive relationship. Naturally, they would not prepare any dowry for the other sect disciples. Moreover, whether it was Cha Bai or Tiangu, the concept fragments that they took out were actually both beneficial to their own disciples. If they were asked to produce other concept fragments, they would certainly be unwilling as well. It's about time now. After Guo Chong took the sword and saber concept fragments from Cha Bai and Tiangu, he put them together with the several hundreds of concept fragments that were in front of him. Without any warning, his eyes brightened up instantly. 903 Chapter 904, 10 hours. The instant they heard Guo Chang's words, the other four peak masters' eyes lit up as well. Whoosh! Suddenly, Guo Chang raised a hand. The several hundreds of concept fragments that were hovering in front of him instantly fell down towards the profound assimilation formation that enveloped the entire high platform like rain. Swish, 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 pieces of concept fragments fell into the fog that shrouded the high platform and disappeared without a trace. It's coming. Duan Lingtian, who was inside the profound assimilation formation, and who had merged his spiritual energy with it, immediately noticed the appearance of the several hundreds of concept fragments. After the concept fragments fell into the profound assimilation formation, it was refined into waves and waves of concept energy by the profound assimilation formation immediately. In just a blink of an eye, the concept energy quickly spread out through the entire space of the profound assimilation formation. Duan Lingtian, whose eyes were opened, could see the solidified concept energy clearly. The concept energy could be divided into 7 types. 5 of them were green, red, blue, purple and khaki in colors. They were obviously the energy that was made up of 5 different nature concepts: wind, fire, water, thunder, and earth. The other 2 types were colorless. However, a faint yet strong solidified chi neatly emanated out in their immediate surroundings. It was either the sword or saber concept energy. It was obvious that the energy was formed from both the sword and saber concepts. What a pity that I only comprehend the wind, thunder, earth and sword concepts. Otherwise, my gain this time would be even greater. Duan Lingtian took a deep breath as his spiritual energy began to move swiftly in the profound assimilation formation. Following the memory of the rebirth martial emperor, he tried his best to control the formation as much as he possibly could. At the same time, the green, purple and khaki-colored concept energy that were spread out in the profound assimilation formation and the surrounding sword-shaped chi concept energy each had 1/10 separated from their main bodies. The 4 concept energy that were separated vibrated in the air before flying in the same direction. The direction was exactly where Duan Lingtian was located. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The concept energy that originated from a large number of wind, thunder, earth and sword concept fragments each rushed into Duan Lingtian's body. At the same time, the surface of his body emitted 4 solidified concepts that slowly became majestic and vast as time passed. Those were the wind, thunder, earth and sword concepts. The 4 concepts gradually became bigger as it slowly transformed. It was obvious that they were continuously digesting the 4 waves of concept energy that were entering Duan Lingtian's body. As long as he could digest the 4 concept energy completely, all 4 concepts would also be able to complete their final transformation. When Duan Lingtian was separating the 4 concept energy that he needed and let them enter his body, he could feel his spiritual energy, that had merged with the profound assimilation formation and was about 90% depleted, suddenly quivered for a moment. It was as if it was going to be expelled out of the formation soon. With the spiritual energy that I possess now, it's not enough for me to separate any more concept energy. However, it's definitely more than enough for me to let a certain someone repel the concept energy in the profound assimilation formation. Duan Lingtian moved his thoughts. The final little spiritual energy that was left pierced through the profound assimilation formation again and issued the last command. At the same time, the spiritual energy that Duan Lingtian merged with the profound assimilation formation was completely used up. If Duan Lingtian opened his eyes now, he would instantly see a red figure that was also sitting cross-legged inside the profound assimilation formation in a distance that was not too far away. Hu Fei, the direct disciple of the Peak Master of Fire Peak, had an extra force of resistance around his body. The moment this force of resistance appeared, the red concept energy that was originally by his side, the concept energy transformed by the fire concept fragments, was completely repelled. It was unable to approach his body at all. Right at this moment, the wave of red concept energy dissipated. It vanished swiftly out of sight. The other 8 people, on the other hand, were more or less absorbing the concept energy that they needed. However, the amount of concept energy that merged with their bodies was only about 1%. The rest of the concept energy proceeded to vanish inside the profound assimilation formation. It was as if they had been swallowed up by the profound assimilation formation. Even just 1% of the concept energy was more than enough to allow the 8 people to reap quite a great number of benefits. Time passed by quietly. An hour had gone by. 2 hours had gone by. Outside of the profound assimilation formation, outside of the high platform, the 5 peak masters of the 5-element sect were waiting. From the very beginning until now, their attentions were on the profound assimilation formation. Anticipation could be seen in their eyes. All of them were eager to find out exactly how many levels the young talented people of their own peaks, who had entered the profound assimilation formation, had managed to raise for their own concept. 5 hours went by quickly. However, the fog surrounding the high platform had yet to dissipate. It meant that the profound assimilation formation was still running, and the concept energy that was transformed from the concept fragments had yet to be fully digested by the people inside. What's going on? Yu Fang, the peak master of Water Peak, furrowed her brows together. This doesn't seem right. I remember last time when we entered the profound assimilation formation, we came out after 3 hours. I find it strange as well. Tiangu, the peak master of Earth Peak, nodded his head. It's a pity that it's almost impossible for my spiritual energy to pierce through the profound assimilation formation to see what's actually going on inside. There's only one possibility. Someone has yet to fully digest the concept energy in his body. Cha Bai, the peak master of Fire Peak, chimed in with a glum look on his face. Looks like this generation of disciples would bring a lot of surprises to us. The longer they stay inside, the more benefits they'll gain. Guo Chong, the peak master of Gold Peak, who was also the sect leader of the 5-element sect, exclaimed in surprise. Chi Yu, the peak master of Wood Peak, was standing at the side with a face full of anticipation as well. Duan Lingtian, could it be you? He asked quietly in his heart. Inside the profound assimilation formation, although some of the young talents had completely absorbed and digested the concept energy and successfully elevated the concepts that they comprehended, they were still temporarily unable to wake up due to the existence of the profound assimilation formation. Once they had entered the concept comprehension state and were shrouded by the profound assimilation formation, they would not be able to wake up if the formation did not disappear. This time, they could not even sense the transformations in the concept that they had comprehended. Only when the profound assimilation formation had completed disappeared would they be able to sense the changes in the concept that they had comprehended and instantly wake up. It was actually very easy to make the profound assimilation formation disappear. As long as the concept energy that was spread out all over the profound assimilation formation and the concept energy that was inside the human bodies who were inside the formation completely vanished, the formation would disappear as well. However, the only person who was still conscious in the profound assimilation formation was Duan Lingtian. How refreshing! Duan Lingtian was absolutely overjoyed when he could clearly sense the 4 concepts that he comprehended was still continuously enhancing themselves. Originally, I need to spend at least 120 hours to fully digest these 4 concept energy. However, since I can simultaneously comprehend 2 different types of concept energy, I only need half of that time, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. As for Huang Daniu and the others, they needed to spend 3 hours just to fully absorb and digest 1% of the concept energy. He, on the other hand, needed 30 hours to fully absorb and digest 10% of 1 concept energy. 4 concept energy would amount to 120 hours. However, because he could comprehend 2 different concepts at the same time, it was more efficient for him as the time was reduced by half, which was 60 hours. Now, 5 hours have gone by. I need 55 more hours. As he thought to himself, Duan Lingtian immersed himself in the feelings of having his 4 concepts being elevated again. This kind of roller coaster-like feelings overwhelmed him with joy from the bottom of his heart. Wind, sometimes gentle and sometimes swift. Thunder, sometimes harmonious and sometimes violent. Sword, sometimes calm and sometimes sharp. Earth, allowed Duan Lingtian to feel like he was united with the entire land underneath, moving as one. In the profound assimilation formation, Duan Lingtian, who was digesting the 4 concept energy and elevating the concept that he comprehended happily, was in an extremely good mood. How he wished this moment would last forever. However, the 5 people who were outside the profound assimilation formation were completely worried sick. It has been 10 hours, but the profound assimilation formation has yet to disappear. Nothing went wrong inside, right? Tiangu asked while he made his own assumption. I don't think so, Yu Fang shook her head. This profound assimilation formation was arranged by a martial monarch stage inscription master that our 5-element sect's ancestor hired. It has never once caused a problem before, I'm sure there's no problem this time. But, this is just too long. In the history of our 5-element sect, it only took the profound assimilation formation 3 hours to finish every time we activated the formation. Cha Bai's face was a little glum when he frowned. At this moment, even Guo Chong, the sect leader of 5-element sect, no longer appeared as calm as he usually was. 10 hours, what's actually happening inside? He quickly looked towards Chi Yu, who remained calm. Chi Yu, what do you think? What can I think? Chi Yu shrugged and smiled faintly. Now, what's the use if we panic? It's not like we can forcibly smash open the profound assimilation formation and enter to have a look at our little fellow's conditions. Tianjiu let out a wry smile after he listened to Chi Yu's words. That's the inscription formation that a martial emperor had arranged. How's it possible for us to smash it open by force? We've only mastered the activation method of the profound assimilation formation, but not the method to shut it off. According to the senior martial emperor, as long as the concept energy has been fully absorbed and digested by the people inside, the profound assimilation formation will shut off completely. It has always been like that all these while. Guo Chong frowned as he added, however, this time, it's indeed a bit strange. Don't tell me that there's still somebody inside who still hasn't fully absorbed and digest the concept energy yet. But, it has already been 10 hours. If it's so, how high will his concept be elevated? 904 Chapter 905, Waiting. Guo Chong's words instantly reminded the other 4 peak masters, including Chi Yu. Astonishment could instantly be seen on their faces. Indeed, if there was still somebody who had not finished absorbing and digesting the concept energy that was contained in the profound assimilation formation, how high would his concept be elevated? This is almost impossible. Very quickly, as if he had come to some realization, Tianjiu shook his head as he frowned. Since several thousand years ago, when the profound assimilation formation became popular in the entire country, there has never been a case of someone being inside for more than 3.5 hours, let alone 10 hours. It's usually only 3 hours more or less. Perhaps, something has happened to the profound assimilation formation. Tianjiu voiced out his speculation. You do have a point. Yu Fang, who was standing by the side, nodded her head. A hint of worries could be seen in between her brows. If something has really happened to the profound assimilation formation, they should be okay, right? The moment these words left her mouth, Guo Chong, Chi Yu and Cha Bai's faces immediately turned solemn. Tian Gu's words earlier had struck a chord in them. Now, after Yu Fang had said like this, they could not help but be worried about the safety of their disciples who were inside the profound assimilation formation. Time went by quietly. Just like that, a day had quickly gone by. It has already been a day, and yet, there's still no movement at all. No, I'm going to break into the profound assimilation formation. After waiting for a day, Cha Bai could no longer bear it anymore as he flew out. He lifted his hand and a flaming saber consolidated in his hand and slashed downwards with a howl. Roar! The flaming saber landed on the profound assimilation formation viciously in fury. However, the moment it came in contact with the fog on top of the profound assimilation formation, it vanished without a trace. The fog on the profound assimilation formation was like a fearsome beast with a bloody open mouth that swallowed the flaming saber whole. It's useless. Tianjiu shook his head when he saw Cha Bai was about to make another attempt. That's an inscription formation that was arranged by a martial monarch stage powerhouse. Moreover, it's also a formation that requires a very high-level spiritual energy. Unless you're a martial monarch powerhouse yourself, you won't be able to break it open at all. Tianjiu was an inscription master himself. He absolutely had the authority when it came to this respect. For this reason, although Cha Bai's face was still pretty glum, he was no longer as hasty anymore after he heard Tian Gu's words. Peak Master Cha Bai, we understand your feelings. A helpless and wry smile could be seen on Yu Fang's face. However, just like what Peak Master Chi Yu had said earlier, what we can do right now is wait. Wait for the profound assimilation formation to disperse and for them to finally come out. Cha Bai nodded his head before he swept a glance at Guo Chong and Chi Yu, who were sitting cross-legged in the air below. He took a deep breath as he proceeded to sit in the air cross-legged as well. He would cultivate while he waited for his direct disciple, Hu Fei, to come out of the profound assimilation formation. Very soon, another day had gone by. There's still no movement at all. Chi Yu opened his eyes and glanced towards the profound assimilation formation on the high platform not far away as he muttered, Duan Ling Tian, Huang Dan Yu. Please don't let anything happen to that two little fellows. The future of Wood Peak still relies on the two of you. After Qi Yu had seen Duan Lingtian and Huang Danyu's strength, he had already treated the two of them as the main pillars of Wood Peak's future. Moreover, he even had the idea of grooming one of them into becoming the next peak master of Wood Peak as well. Naturally, the reason why he chose only one of them was not because both of their talents were equal, so it was difficult for him to decide. However, it was because he had a feeling that Duan Lingtian would most likely not stay in the Wood Peak and the Five-Element sect in the future. After all, he was a variant, an existence that was well known in the Cloud Continent as God's favorite. Such an existence would never be bound by the Five-Element sect. The Five-Element sect could be considered as one of the three major forces in the eastern side of the northern desert. However, it could only be regarded as a tiny third-grade force by the border in the entire Cloud Continent. It was not worth mentioning at all in front of those genuine powerful forces. As long as Duan Lingtian was willing, he would not hesitate to regard him as the successor of the Peak Master of Wood Peak. However, if Duan Lingtian was unwilling, he would not insist on it and would choose the second best person, Huang Danyu, as the successor of the Peak Master of Wood Peak. Although Huang Danyu was not as powerful as Duan Lingtian, he was still much more outstanding compared to the other Wood Peak disciples. "What? Are you worried about Duan Lingtian and Huang Danyu?" Suddenly a familiar voice reverberated in his ear through voice transmission. He knew perfectly well who the owner of this voice was without having to turn around and look. "Aren't you worried about your two beloved disciples too?" Qi Yu glanced at Guo Chang, who was nearby, and replied him with a question through voice transmission as well. The moment Guo Chang heard this, he let out a wry smile immediately. How could he not be worried? Of course, he was worried. For many years, he, who had no sons, had long treated his direct disciples as his own. "Have you asked Duan Lingtian before if he would be willing to continue to stay in our Five-Element sect in the future?" Guo Chang looked at Qi Yu and asked again with his voice transmission. Before Qi Yu could answer him, he immediately added again, "If he's willing to stay in the Five-Element sect, let alone becoming the Peak Master of Wood Peak, I can even give him the sect leader's position in the Five-Element sect." The instant Qi Yu heard his words, he could not help but be a little moved. "Then, how about your two direct disciples?" "Them." Guo Chang could not suppress his sigh when Qi Yu mentioned the Nangong twins. "That two fellows have an ambition that's bigger than the sky. They've made up their minds that after they leave that place, they'll leave the Five-Element sect to wander around and see the outside world together. Actually, their ambitions are not too bad. Moreover, they've stayed in the Five-Element sect since they were young and have never left before. It's not unusual for them to yearn to go out." Qi Yu nodded his head. "Their ambitions are just too huge, so it's impossible for them to be the successor of the sect leader of Five-Element sect. If Duan Lingtian is willing, I can pass on the sect leader's position to him without him having to join Gold Peak," Guo Chang added. "You really think that Duan Lingtian will be interested in the sect leader's position that even your two beloved disciples are not interested in?" Qi Yu shook his head. He paused for a moment before he continued in a solemn tone, "Don't forget, he's still a variant." A variant. When Guo Chang heard Qi Yu's word, he became silent immediately. That was right. A variant. What kind of existence was that? How could he possibly be bound by the Five-Element sect? Even the top-class forces in the Cloud Continent would be willing to fight each other to death for a variant to join them. "I keep feeling like something's wrong with the situation in the profound assimilation formation. By right, the formation should not have any problem at all." Guo Chang quickly changed the topic as he looked at Qi Yu and asked, "What do you think? Is it possible that this actually has something to do with Duan Lingtian? He's a variant after all." "You're asking me? Who should I ask then?" Qi Yu rolled his eyes at Guo Chang. Looking at the way they were now, it did not feel like he was talking to a sect leader at all. Instead, they looked like two ordinary brothers who were having a leisurely chat together. Guo Chang turned quiet at once. However, he was not bothered at all by Qi Yu's lack of formality. In front of others, he might put on the haughty air of a sect leader in front of Qi Yu to show the prestige of a sect leader. However, he had never once considered himself as one when he was alone with Qi Yu. Instead, he would still treat Qi Yu like the junior brother who used to roam around with him last time. At that time, he had saved Qi Yu's lives many times before, and Qi Yu had also saved his lives many times as well. Although Qi Yu and he were not in the same peak, not to mention that they were usually in a competitive relationship, they were still sworn friends who were ready to die for each other. That was engraved deeply into their bones. Presently, in the five-element sect, the friendship between the both of them was only known to themselves. Even the other peak masters of the three other peaks did not know that they had such a friendship between them. Otherwise, that Cha Bai, the peak master of Fire Peak, would not dare to intentionally instigate conflicts in the relationships between the two of them in front of Guo Chong, the sect leader of the five-element sect, so blatantly. If Cha Bai found out that the two of them had such a friendship between them, he would most likely be so enraged that he would throw up blood literally. It turned out that all of his actions of wasting so much saliva was merely a big joke in the eyes of Guo Chong and Qi Yu. It has already been 2 days, but the profound assimilation formation has yet to disappear, Guo Chong sighed. Let's wait for a while more. I have a feeling that we no longer have to wait for long anymore, Qi Yu responded. All right, Guo Chong nodded and then continued to close his eyes to attain mental composure. Following suit, Qi Yu closed his eyes and waited patiently as well. Not long after the two of them closed their eyes, Cha Bai, who was hovering at the other side, slowly opened his instead. Looking at the high platform that was shrouded by the profound assimilation formation, he muttered to himself, Hu Fei, with your achievement in the fire concept and the help of the profound assimilation formation this time, you'll be able to comprehend the 9th level intermediate fire concept, right? From Cha Bai's words, it was obvious that he had great expectation for Hu Fei. Not long after, Tianji and Yu Fang opened their eyes as well. After sweeping a glance at the high platform that was still shrouded in the profound assimilation formation, they let out a soft sigh before closing their eyes again. Time continued to pass by. 1 hour, 2 hours, in just a blink of an eye, another 7 hours had gone by. Inside the profound assimilation formation, a purple figure was sitting there. His body that was completely shrouded and intertwined with 4 solidified energies was emanating waves and waves of vast majestic aura. This purple-clad young man was sitting there motionlessly like a mountain, and he resembled an eminent monk. If one was to look closely, one would easily notice that 2 of the forces around the young man's body was being enhanced in a tremendous pace, and the other 2 energies were emitting a terrifying aura. The terrifying aura was like a wind that was roaring, thunder that was bawling, and earth that was quaking. Furthermore, there was another tyrannical aura that was intertwining and lingering around the purple-clad young man like a shadow. If somebody else was here, he would easily recognize this tyrannical aura in just a glance. It was the sword concept. Moreover, it did not seem like a normal sword concept. The concept energies that are refined from the earth and sword concept fragments by the profound assimilation formation are almost fully digested now. 5 more hours to go. The purple-clad young man, Duan Lingtian, muttered to himself. 905 Chapter 906, Everyone wakes up. 5 hours were not too long. Very soon, it had gone by as well. When Duan Lingtian felt the remaining concept energy had completely merged with the concepts that he had comprehended and had raised his concepts to a certain level, he abruptly opened his eyes. At the same time, he noticed that the profound assimilation formation started to whirl. He knew that the profound assimilation formation was about to shut itself off now. An ordinary person can only stay in the profound assimilation formation up to 3 hours at the most, but I'm actually already here for 60 hours. This is because I can divide my consciousness into 2, allowing me to comprehend 2 different types of concepts at once. Otherwise, I think I'll have to stay up to 120 hours. As Duan Lingtian thought to himself, he swept a glance at the other 9 young people who were sitting cross-legged all around him. With a flash in his eyes, an idea began to form in his mind. I can't let anybody find out that I'm the reason the profound assimilation formation ran continuously for 60 hours. Otherwise, once this matter has spread, I'm afraid there'll be countless of people who will come and ask me about the method to stay in the profound assimilation formation for a longer period of time. Duan Lingtian had given it quite some thought in this short period of time. He converged and retrieved the 4 vast majestic concepts that were emanating from his body and proceeded to shut his eyes again. The profound assimilation formation was about to shut down soon. What he was going to do now was to not give himself away and leave no traces behind. Since there was a total of 10 people in the profound assimilation formation, even if there was somebody who was suspicious of him, there was no evidence for them to confirm it as long as he did not give himself away. Outside of the profound assimilation formation, in front of the high platform, the 5 peak masters who were sitting cross-legged in the air opened their eyes at the same time. The reason why it seemed like they had a tacit understanding was due to the fact that they could feel movements from the profound assimilation formation before them at the same time. This profound assimilation formation is finally going to shut down. Tian Gu's eyes lit up as he exclaimed in surprise. It took a whole 2.5 days. If we break it down into hours, that's 60 hours in total. Yu Fang marveled. A light flashed across Cha Bai's eyes as he slowly uttered, usually, those people who are inside the profound assimilation formation can only stay up to 3 hours at the most. But the 10 of them has been inside for 60 hours. How peculiar this is. It's either something's wrong with the profound assimilation formation or there's somebody in there who has been absorbing the concept energy for a full 60 hours. I can still accept the former, but if it's the latter, Guo Chang muttered to himself, but when he reached the end of the sentence, his eyes instantly glistened brightly. Although Guo Chang's muttering was not loud, it was clearly heard by the other 4 peak masters who had the same thoughts as well. In the meantime, their gazes were locked firmly on the fog that was dissipating before them. They wanted to know if it was true that somebody had been absorbing the concept energy for a whole 60 hours inside the profound assimilation formation. If it was true, how high would that person's concept be raised up to? Duan Ling Tian, could it be you? Chi Yu murmured again in his heart. He kept having this feeling that Duan Ling Tian had something to do with the abnormal behavior of the profound assimilation formation. Perhaps, the reason he had this suspicion was due to the fact that Duan Ling Tian was a variant. The fog gradually dissipated, signaling that the profound assimilation formation had already shut down on its own. After the profound assimilation formation was shut down, the fog on the high platform vanished without a trace, and all that was left were 10 young men and women sitting cross-legged in various places. All of their eyes were closed, and there was no movement at all. All 5 peak masters let out a sigh of relief when they saw their own peak disciples were safe and sound. Meanwhile, when they recalled the fact that the profound assimilation formation only shut down after 60 hours, they could not help but sweep their glances over at the 10 people on the high platform one by one. It was as if they were trying to figure out if was there any person who had absorbed a whole 60 hours of concept energy among them. If that was true, even if that person had merely comprehended the first-level void interpretation concept beforehand, he would have at least reached the 4th-level void transformation concept when he stepped out of the profound assimilation formation. They once had the honor of entering the profound assimilation formation previously, so they knew very well how much the profound assimilation formation would help in enhancing a martial artist. 3 hours were enough to raise 1 or 2 levels of a person's void interpretation concept. 60 hours were 20 times more than 3 hours. One could easily imagine just how much the person's concept would be raised by continuously absorbing the concept energy for such long hours. Due to this reason, they really wanted to know if there was really a person who could absorb such a huge amount of concept energy for a whole 60 hours among the 10 young talents. Or did the profound assimilation formation went haywire? Very quickly, the 10 young talents who were sitting cross-legged on the high platform, including Duan Ling Tian, began to open their eyes one by one. The moment they opened their eyes, slight confusion could be seen on all the 10 faces. It was the same for Duan Ling Tian as well. In order not to give himself away, his response was almost similar to the other 9 people. Tian Zhen from Earth Peak stretched his limbs and frowned at the same time as he asked, the time that we spent on comprehending this time, does not seem like 3 hours, or does it? I also feel like we're inside for quite a long time. Tan Huan from Water Peak stood up and nodded as she agreed. At first, when I entered the comprehending state, I didn't feel anything, but now, somehow it feels like it has been a few days. It definitely doesn't feel like 3 hours, Nangong Yi from Gold Peak added as well. It was apparent they already knew beforehand that those people who enter the profound assimilation formation would usually only stay for about 3 hours, never exceeding 3.5 hours, before they entered the profound assimilation formation. There was quite a number of profound assimilation formation in the Cloud Continent. However, nobody had stayed for more than 3.5 hours before. Why 3 hours? Perplexed, Huang Daniu asked. Yeah, indeed, why 3 hours? Following suit behind Huang Daniu, Duan Ling Tian asked with a confused face. At this moment, there was no doubt that he was pretending to play the fool. However, nobody could see through him at all. Peak Master Chi Yu didn't tell you? Nangong Yi was a little stunned. Then, he proceeded to explain to Duan Ling Tian and Huang Daniu about the things that he knew about the profound assimilation formation. Whoever enters the profound assimilation formation would normally only stay in there for 3 hours. So far, in the entire Cloud Continent, we haven't heard of anyone who is an exception at all, Nangong Yi finished in one breath. Ah, so it's like that. Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu finally understood. However, Duan Lingtian secretly snorted at Nangong Yi's logic. If his spiritual energy was powerful enough to allow him to absorb all of the concept energy, he would definitely be able to stay much longer inside the profound assimilation formation. As for why other ordinary people could only stay up to 3 hours, well, he naturally knew the reason behind it as well. This was because those people could only absorb and digest 1% of a certain concept energy that was inside the profound assimilation formation. No matter what level the person's comprehension was, it would only take that person 3 hours to fully absorb and digest that 1%. Even if it was only 1%, it was naturally more than enough to help that person to elevate his concept to a certain level. I also feel that I've spent more than 3 hours inside, a few days to be exact. Perhaps the profound assimilation formation will make us feel like the time is stretched longer, and a day would feel like a year. Frowning, Huang Daniu asked after contemplating it for a while. At once, the 10 young talents' eyes that were filled with questions landed on each of the peak masters of the 5-element sect, wanting to get some answers from them. It's true that all of you have stayed for more than 3 hours inside. To be exact, all of you have stayed for 2.5 days in there, which also amounted to 60 hours, Guo Chong, the peak master of Gold Peak, who was also the sect leader of 5-element sect, slowly answered. 2.5 days. 60 hours. The moment Guo Chong finished his words, all the 10 young talents could not help but be taken aback. Naturally, this included Nangong Chen from Gold Peak as well. Although his face remained aloof with not much changes, a hint of bafflement could be seen in the depth of his eyes. It was obvious that he was taken aback by his master's words as well. Master, didn't you tell us that martial artists in the Cloud Continent can only stay for a maximum of 3 hours when they enter the profound assimilation formation? What's going on with this 60 hours? Nangong Yi was the first to query. A look of confusion could be seen on his face. He could not fathom this situation at all. Just like him, the other young talents were also feeling confused and puzzled as well. They were also staring at Guo Chong with a perplexed look, wanting to get some answers from him. This, of course, included Duan Lingtian as well. Although he knew the reason why, there was no way for him to give himself away. In order to do that, he also had to feign ignorance just like the other 9 people. Suddenly, Duan Lingtian could feel a gaze locked upon himself. This gaze was eyeing him from the top to the bottom as if it was trying to see through him. As for the master of the gaze, Duan Lingtian had already noticed it since the beginning. It was the peak master of Wood Peak, Chi Yu. Peak master, may I ask what are you doing? Looking towards Chi Yu, Duan Lingtian asked using his voice transmission as he looked at Chi Yu. A look of confusion could still be seen on his face. Duan Lingtian, I remember that the concept that you've comprehended earlier was at the 3rd level intermediate wind concept, am I right? I'm looking forward to the progress you've made after coming out from the profound assimilation formation. Chi Yu's voice transmission entered Duan Lingtian's ears clearly. The word, progress, was particularly emphasized on as if there was some meaning behind it. Duan Lingtian's heart leapt up instantly. Could it be that the peak master of Wood Peak has discovered something? Impossible. Duan Lingtian quickly dismissed the thought. It must be because he thinks I'm a variant, so he suspects that I'm the person who prolonged the profound assimilation formation's activated time from 3 to 60 hours. When Duan Lingtian thought of this, he became calm again and with a speed that was neither slow nor fast, he answered through voice transmission, Peak Master, perhaps, there's one thing that you may not know, the concept that I comprehended is not just the wind concept alone. More precisely, the wind concept is the weaker one between the 2 void interpretation concepts that I comprehended. Duan Lingtian did not find it weird that Chi Yu knew he had previously comprehended the 3rd level intermediate wind concept. In the beginning, when he and Huang Daniu first arrived in Wood Peak, he had gotten into a match before. At that time, his opponents were Luo Chen and Hong Shi, who were now already dead. During the match, he had demonstrated his power that was at the 3rd level intermediate wind concept. Many disciples from Wood Peak had seen that as well. It was not unusual that this fact had reached Chi Yu, the peak master of Wood Peak's ears. 906 Chapter 907, Demonstrating One by One. What? Sure enough, a look of shock appeared on Chi Yu's face instantly the moment he heard Duan Lingtian's voice transmission. You've comprehended another void interpretation concept as well. Yes, Duan Lingtian nodded in reply. In the next moment, Duan Lingtian shifted his gaze from Qi Yu and looked over to Guo Chong, the sect leader of Five Element Sect, again. Guo Chong finally answered Nangong Yi's question. By right, you should have come out after being in the profound assimilation formation for 3 hours. However, all of you have been there for a whole 60 hours this time. Let alone all of you, even were puzzled and confused by this as well, he explained. The instant the group of young talents heard his words, they were instantly struck dumb. However, there's one thing that we can be sure of. Guo Chong's eyes swept across each and every one of the 10 young talents, including Duan Lingtian, before he continued unhurriedly. There are only 2 possible reasons for the profound assimilation formation to continue running for 60 hours. 1. There's something wrong with the profound assimilation formation itself. Second, somebody has been absorbing the concept energy for the entire 60 hours. When he reached the end of his sentence, his eyes glistened brightly. Absorbing a whole 60 hours worth of concept energy. When the words left Guo Chong's mouth, the 9 young talents, other than Duan Lingtian, were gaping in astonishment. If there was really somebody who had been absorbing the concept energy for such a long time, how high would the concept that he had comprehended be raised up to then? Other than Duan Lingtian, the 9 young talents, including Huang Danyu, were completely thunderstruck. Perhaps he could see through most of the young talents' thoughts. Guo Chong continued, with the several hundreds of concept fragments that I put into the profound assimilation formation earlier, if there really is somebody who had been absorbing the concept energy for a whole 60 hours, even if he has only comprehended the first level void interpretation concept before this, his concept would be able to make a breakthrough to the 4th level void transformation concept now that he's out of the profound assimilation formation. 4th level void transformation concept. What kind of logic was that? Among the group of young talents, the person who had comprehended the strongest void interpretation concept was none other than the Nangong twins from Gold Peak who had both comprehended the 8th level void interpretation concept. 8th level void interpretation concept was equivalent to the strength of 90 ancient horned dragons. 4th level void transformation concept, on the other hand, was equivalent to the strength of 500 ancient horned dragons. Although the 9th level void interpretation concept and the 1st level void transformation concept was only a level apart, the gap between them was as wide as an abyss. The former had a strength that was equivalent to 100 ancient horned dragons while the latter had a strength that was equivalent to 200 ancient horned dragons. Every time the void transformation concept was raised up to another level, the strength would be raised up to another 100 ancient horned dragons. Who's that? At once, the 10 young talents, other than Nangong Chen, were looking around at each other as if they were trying to figure out the one who had managed to absorb concept energy for such a long period of time. Who exactly was that freak? Seeing the group of young talents eyeing each other, Duan Lingtian undoubtedly followed suit as he pretended to feign ignorance. Then again, it does not necessarily mean that somebody has been continuously absorbing the concept energy for such a long time. Perhaps, it was the profound assimilation formation that went haywire, Guo Chong added after he saw how the 9 young talents were eyeing each other. Now, you must have more or less sensed the changes in the concept that you've comprehended. However, I'm sure you still can't confirm the level that your concept is actually at right now. Guo Chong's gaze was trained intensely on the 10 young talents in front of him as he continued, now, I'm going to call you out one by one, and all of you will demonstrate the concept that you're comprehended. Show us the gains that you've obtained from the profound assimilation formation this time. The moment Guo Chong's words left his mouth, the other 4 Peak Masters' eyes immediately lit up. Especially Qi Yu, the Peak Master of Wood Peak, who cast a meaningful glance towards Duan Lingtian. A deep meaningful smile crept up on his face at once as if it was telling Duan Lingtian, kiddo, since you said that you've managed to comprehend 2 void interpretation concepts, let me see what level the other concept that you've comprehended is at. Duan Lingtian had naturally noticed Qi Yu's gaze and could also guess the thoughts that were in his mind as well. However, he did not seem to be bothered by it at all. The reason why he said such words earlier was due to the faith that he had in himself. He believed that he would be able to mislead Qi Yu into thinking that he was not the person who had been absorbing the concept energy for 60 hours straight. Although he had been absorbing the concept energy for 60 hours, it was not limited to one type of concept only. If he had been absorbing only one concept for such a long period of time, then yes, just like what Guo Chong had assumed, his concept would be elevated to the 4th level void transformation concept or higher. However, when he was in the profound assimilation formation earlier, he had absorbed 4 types of concept energy. He had spent 30 hours to fully absorb each of the concept energy. Initially, he needed to use 120 hours to fully absorb 4 different concept energy. However, since he could separate his consciousness into 2, he could comprehend 2 different concepts simultaneously, doubling the efficiency of the absorption. Due to this reason, he only spent 60 hours to completely absorb the 4 concept energy. The 4 concepts that he had comprehended also had great improvements. Humph. Duan Lingtian's gaze landed on Hu Fei and he snorted secretly. After Hu Fei had come out of the profound assimilation formation, his brows had been furrowed together. Duan Lingtian had long noticed this since a while back. As for the reason, well, it was easy enough for him to guess. What's the matter? Upon hearing Guo Chang announce that he wanted all of them to demonstrate their concepts that had been elevated, Hu Fei hesitated slightly. This was because he could sense that the concept that he had comprehended did not seem to have any improvement at all compared to before he went inside the profound assimilation formation. Naturally, he could not confirm whether it had leveled up or not without demonstrating it. According to Master, after I enter the profound assimilation formation, even if I'm down on my luck, I'll still be able to further enhance my fire concept and comprehend the 8th level intermediate fire concept. Hu Fei started to ponder secretly, it's not even impossible for me to comprehend the 9th level intermediate fire concept. After all, my 7th level intermediate fire concept was just a step away from entering the 8th level intermediate fire concept. Perhaps, my fire concept has already made its breakthrough, but since I just came out of the profound assimilation formation, my senses are reacting a little slowly. Yeah, I think that should be the reason why. Hu Fei started to feel at ease as he thought about it this way. The brows that were furrowed together finally eased up. From what he could see, even if he really was down on his luck, it would not be so terrible to the extent where he could not even raise a single level for his fire concept while he was inside the profound assimilation formation. This was almost impossible. However, it would never cross Hu Fei's mind, not even in his dreams, that Duan Lingtian's existence could turn many of his impossibles into possibles. Don't tell me this. Hu Fei still did not discover anything. When Duan Lingtian saw the relief expression on Hu Fei's face, he could not help but be taken aback. Is his response really that slow? Suddenly, Duan Lingtian's attention was snatched back by Guo Chang's voice. Let's start with you. He saw Guo Chang was looking at the male disciple from Earth Peak and motioned him to demonstrate the concept that he had managed to break through in the profound assimilation formation. Apart from Tian Zhen, this male disciple was another one of Earth Peak's young disciple. Upon hearing Guo Chang's words, this Earth Peak disciple dared not slack and immediately responded respectfully, yes, sect leader. The male disciple instantly scrunched his face up, and his body emanated a gust of tyrannical aura that soared up to the sky as if it was about to tear everything in the air apart. Everybody present could instantly see that a layer of solidified translucent aura had suddenly appeared on the surface of the Earth disciple's skin. That was a solidified saber chi. The saber chi enveloped the Earth Peak disciple entirely and transformed into a gigantic sword that was about to soar up to the sky. Saber concept. Everybody present on the scene could immediately see the concept that the Earth Peak disciple had demonstrated. Whoosh! At the same time, the heaven and earth energy in the sky suddenly whirled and waves of vast heaven and earth energy solidified together swiftly and formed the heaven and earth phenomenon. Silhouettes of ancient horned dragons began to appear. There was a total of 70 of them. 70 ancient horned dragons, the 6th level intermediate saber concept. Tian Gu's eyes lit up as he exclaimed in astonishment, "Good job, lad. I remember you were only at the 4th level intermediate saber concept before you entered the profound assimilation formation. With the help of the profound assimilation formation, you've managed to raise 2 levels at once and actually comprehended the 6th level intermediate saber concept." Hee. The Earth Peak disciple chuckled before turning towards Tian Zhen by the side and said politely, "I'm sure senior brother Tian Zhen's must be much stronger than mine. You little brat, are you trying to invite trouble for me?" Tian Zhen scolded jokingly, "Originally, mine was at the 5th level void interpretation concept, but now that you've said it like this, what if I didn't make a breakthrough to the 7th level void interpretation concept when I demonstrate my concept later? You'd take the spotlight away from me, wouldn't you? Senior brother Tian Zhen, I'm sure you've already comprehended the 7th level void interpretation concept." The Earth Peak disciple quickly added. Upon hearing their conversation, even the 5 peak masters could not help but chuckle a little. Guo Chang smiled as he looked towards Tian Zhen and said, Tianjin, I really would like to see whether he has taken away your spotlight or not. You go demonstrate the concept that you've comprehended too. Yes, sect leader, Tianjin replied. Then, his solemn face began to turn a little nervous. Although he could clearly sense that his concept had a major transformation compared to before he entered the profound assimilation formation, and he was sure that his concept did indeed have a breakthrough, he had no idea exactly how high his level was raised up to. It was only by fully demonstrating his concept and stirring up the heaven and earth phenomenon that he could be sure of the concept level that he had comprehended. 10 days before, the concept that Tianjin demonstrated in the Battle of the Five Peaks was at the 5th level intermediate wind concept. Duan Ling Tian's eyes immediately fell on Tianjin. The rest of the people were the same as well. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. As the sound of the wind whistling soared up to the sky, gusts of green hurricanes fluttered around Tianjin like wind dragons that entwined his entire body. 907 Chapter 908, You're bluffing. Swish. Along with the gusts of green hurricanes that appeared around Tianjin's body, the heaven and earth energy quivered in the sky above his head. Gradually, the heaven and earth phenomenon started to solidify into form. Silhouettes of ancient horned dragons began to take form as well. 10, 20, 30, the number kept increasing. Finally, the number stopped at 80 dragons. 7th level intermediate wind concept. The crowd's eyes were slightly astonished when they saw Tianjin's concept. After all, breaking through to the 7th level intermediate wind concept from the 5th level intermediate wind concept was not as easy as entering the 6th level intermediate wind concept from the 4th level intermediate wind concept. Tianjin finally let out a sigh of relief after he made sure that he had indeed comprehended the 7th level intermediate wind concept. Excellent, excellent. Seeing the huge progress that his son made, Tianjiu let out a wide smile. With a complicated look, Yu Fang cast a glance at Tianjiu and forced a smile as she congratulated him. Congratulations, Peak Master Tianjiu. Thank you, Peak Master Yu Fang. I believe that Tanhuan has comprehended the 7th level void interpretation concept as well, just like my useless son here. Tianjiu smiled in response. Thank you for the blessing. Yu Fang nodded her head. Then, with an anticipatory look, she turned towards Tanhuan instead. At this moment, Tanhuan, who could feel Yu Fang's eyes on her, had beads of sweat forming on her forehead. The feelings that she had right now was exactly the same feelings that Tianjin had earlier. Although she could faintly feel that the water concept that she had comprehended had been elevated, she still did not know exactly how much progress it had made. Tanhuan, after hearing the conversation between Tianjiu and Yu Fang, along with Yu Fang's gaze, everybody's eyes instantly fell on Tanhuan. At the same time, Guo Chong looked at her as well. Yes, sect leader, Tanhuan responded. The water vapors on her body started to spread out and transformed into a series of turquoise ripples. That was the water concept that she had comprehended. Turquoise ripples intertwined with her body and transformed into an aqua-blue halo that shrouded her entire body. Meanwhile, the heaven and earth energy in the sky started to fluctuate and finally came together to form silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. Finally, the silhouettes of the ancient horned dragons in the heaven and earth phenomenon stopped increasing. 7th level intermediate water concept. Looking at the 80 silhouettes of the ancient horned dragons on top of Tanhuan's head, the crowd's eyes shone with glee. Tanhuan's progress was the same as Tianjin's. Seeing that she had comprehended the 7th level void interpretation concept as well, Tanhuan let out a sigh of relief before smiling at Yu Fang. Master, I've succeeded. Yu Fang nodded her head in satisfaction. After Tanhuan, Guo Chong called out the name of the other female disciple from Water Peak. This female disciple had also comprehended the water concept, and before she entered the profound assimilation formation, she had only comprehended the 3rd level intermediate water concept. At this moment, after coming out of the profound assimilation formation, she had comprehended the 5th level intermediate water concept. You. Next, Guo Chong called out to the other male disciple from the Fire Peak that came with Hu Fei. Just like the male disciple from Earth Peak, the concept that this Fire Peak disciple had comprehended was raised by 2 levels from the 4th to 6th level. Hu Fei. Soon after that, Guo Chong looked at Hu Fei. The moment Guo Chong called out Hu Fei's name, Duan Ling Tian's eyes immediately lit up. A small smirk crept up to the corner of his mouth. The smirk that was full of cynicism. When they were still in the profound assimilation formation, he had used his spiritual energy to control the profound assimilation formation and ripped out 10% of the 4 concept energy that he needed. Due to that, the spiritual energy that he had merged with the profound assimilation formation had become more or less depleted. At that time, he had used the remaining spiritual energy for one final task and issued a simple command to the profound assimilation formation. The command was to prevent Hu Fei from touching the concept energy that he needed. In other words, when they were in the profound assimilation formation, other than Duan Lingtian who had obviously gotten the biggest gain, the other 8 people had gotten significant benefits from it as well. However, Hu Fei was the only one who did not get any benefits at all. Due to Duan Lingtian's foul play, Hu Fei who had entered the comprehension state in the profound assimilation formation was no different from when he was comprehending outside of the formation. I really can't wait to see the expression on his face when he discovers that his fire concept has no improvement at all. Duan Lingtian thought in his heart as the smile that was playing on the corner of his mouth turned wider. Huang Daniu who was standing by Duan Lingtian's side happened to see the smile lingering on the corner of his mouth. With his voice transmission, he asked curiously, "Duan Lingtian, what are you smiling at?" In the meantime, Huang Daniu looked towards the direction Duan Lingyan was looking at under the urging of his curiosity. His eyes landed on Hu Fei who just had his name called out by Guo Chong. "Does it have anything to do with Hu Fei?" Huang Daniu asked. "It's nothing," Duan Lingtian shook his head and replied via voice transmission. However, Huang Daniu refused to believe him. His eyes were locked firmly on Hu Fei. Something told him that Duan Lingtian was hiding something from him. His intuition told him that something must be going on with Hu Fei. After Hu Fei was called out by Guo Chong, everyone focused their eyes on him, making him the spotlight of the entire scene. Hu Fei was the direct disciple of the Peak Master of Fire Peak. In the 5-Element sect, a group of 5-Element sect's disciples had secretly given him a nickname, Ungrateful Bastard. Although it had been 10 years since Hu Fei switched to join Fire Peak and betrayed his master whom he was indebted to for saving his life, and Wood Peak that had trained him into who he was now, he was still being held in contempt by the 5-Element sect's disciples. However, Hu Fei's talent and comprehension were notorious in the 5-Element sect, just a level lower than that of the Nangong twins from Gold Peak, even though his reputation was not very good. Yu Fang smiled as she asked Cha Bai, "Peak Master Cha Bai, your Hu Fei has always been second only to the Nangong twins from Gold Peak among the younger generation of the 5-Element sect. Before this, he already has a comprehension at the 7th level intermediate fire concept. I'm sure it's not a problem for him to enter the 9th level intermediate fire concept after coming out of the profound assimilation formation, right?" "Peak Master Yu Fang, you can't say it like that." Just as a smile appeared on Cha Bai's face and he was about to answer Yu Fang's question, Tianji suddenly chimed in without warning, "What you said is outdated. Now, among the younger generation of the 5-Element sect, we have the addition of Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu, remember? Their talents are definitely not inferior to Hu Fei's." Duan Lingtian, Huang Daniu. The moment Tian Gu's words left his mouth, Yu Fang was stunned for a moment. Then, she quickly looked at Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu before smiling sheepishly, "Ah, I've completely forgotten about them." Cha Bai's face turned glum immediately. Although he did not like what Tianji said, he could not refute it because that was indeed an indisputable fact. Just as most of the people shifted their attention to Tianji and Yu Fang's conversation, Cha Bai announced loudly without warning. From his words, it was obvious that he had full confidence in Hu Fei. Before Hu Fei entered the profound assimilation formation, the fire concept that he comprehended was just a step away from the 8th-level intermediate fire concept. After coming out from the profound assimilation formation this time, I'm sure he has already comprehended the 9th-level intermediate fire concept. Sure enough, the moment Cha Bai's words came out of his mouth, everyone shifted their attention back to him. "Congratulations, Peak Master Cha Bai." Yu Fang congratulated Cha Bai. "Congratulations." Guo Chong and Tianji also congratulated him. All eyes immediately turned towards Hu Fei again. Guo Chong smiled as he announced, "Hu Fei, you can begin now." Hu Fei nodded his head. From around his body, faint flames started to appear and gradually solidified. "Wait a minute." Right at this moment, a loud voice resonated and shocked Hu Fei so much that he shuddered for a second. The flames that were rising from around his body that had yet to solidify completely were extinguished instantly. Everyone, including Hu Fei, immediately shifted their attention to the direction where the voice came from. Over there a young man stood proudly. A purple-clad young man. "Duan Lingtian, what are you doing?" Hu Fei's face darkened instantly as rage started to fill his eyes. Originally, when his master had said such confident words about him, although he was still feeling somewhat anxious, he decided to summon up his courage and was ready to demonstrate his fire concept. From what he could see, since everyone had made such a huge progress as well, there was no reason for him to be the exception. Due to this reason, he was confident that he had comprehended the 9th level intermediate fire concept. Although he could feel that his fire concept was no difference from before he entered the profound assimilation formation, in his mind, that was only because he just came out of the formation and his body was still not fully adjusted. Chi Yu, is this how you educate the disciples of Wood Peak? Cha Bai scoffed as he swept a cold glance at Duan Lingtian before he looked at Chi Yu. Perplexed, Chi Yu looked towards Duan Lingtian and ignored Cha Bai completely. Duan Lingtian, is there anything? Guo Chong frowned. Duan Lingtian's loud cry earlier was also equivalent to interrupting himself. He could not suppress the displeasure that rose up in his heart. I'm sorry, sect leader. I just want to have a few words with Peak Master Cha Bai. I'll feel suffocated if I don't get this off my chest. Duan Lingtian flashed an apologetic smile at Guo Chong before he turned to look at Cha Bai. Right away, everyone, including Guo Chong, shifted their attention to Cha Bai. They were curious about the thing that Duan Lingtian wanted to say to him. What do you want to say? Cha Bai's face was very glum. Peak Master Cha Bai, it's like this. I'm a person who can't tolerate any lies in front of me. Just now you said that Hu Fei has comprehended the 9th level intermediate fire concept, right? However, I don't believe this at all. I think that you're just bluffing. In the beginning, Duan Lingtian's tone was still fairly calm, but his tone was filled with the smell of gunpowder as he came to the end of his sentence. Bluffing. The moment Duan Lingtian finished his sentence, everyone on the scene became completely dumbfounded. Did this Duan Lingtian just accuse Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak, of bluffing? The words that he really had to get off his chest was actually this. Everyone, including Chi Yu, began to shift their attention back to Duan Lingtian. All they could think about at this moment was how brave this Duan Lingtian was. Cha Bai was still the Peak Master of Fire Peak no matter what. Right now, in front of so many people, Duan Lingtian had just accused Cha Bai and said that he was bluffing. Provocation. What a blunt provocation. How dare you? Cha Bai's face turned dark immediately as he roared in fury. Peak Master Cha Bai, I'm a person who really can't tolerate even a small unreasonable thing. I'm sorry if I've accidentally offended you. Duan Lingtian smiled nonchalantly as he looked at Cha Bai. 908 Chapter 909, a bet. Duan Lingtian spoke again. It terrified everyone present on the scene, except for Cha Bai and his disciple. What the hell was this Duan Lingtian doing? Apart from Huang Daniu, who looked like he was deep in his thoughts, and Nangong Chen, who still looked aloof, the other 8 disciples from 5 Element, including Nangong Yi, felt chills creeping down from their heads. Obviously, they were all shocked to the core by Duan Lingtian's words. Even Nangong Yi, the rightful direct disciple of the sect leader of 5 Element sect, did not have the courage to provoke Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak. Duan Lingtian, you're going to hell. After being provoked multiple times by Duan Lingtian, Cha Bai, who was absolutely furious, had a frosty look on his face. His eyes were horrifyingly icy, as if he was going to devour a certain somebody. Peak Master Cha Bai, are you flying into a rage because you're embarrassed? Faced with Cha Bai, who was enraged, Duan Lingtian still remained calm and collected as he said nonchalantly, or perhaps, you genuinely think you're not bluffing and I'm making baseless accusations instead. When he heard Duan Lingtian's words, Cha Bai snorted in disdain as he asked, isn't that the case? Peak Master Cha Bai, if you think that you're not bluffing, and I'm making baseless accusations, let's have a bet, shall we? An undetectable glint flashed across Duan Lingtian's eyes. However, his tone remained calm and cold without any emotions in it. A bet. The moment they heard Duan Lingtian's words, everyone, including Cha Bai and Hu Fei, could not help but be stunned by it. Why'd I have to bet with you? Cha Bai instantly swept a cold glance at Duan Lingtian disdainfully as he mocked, are you even qualified? Duan Lingtian laughed out loud. After he stopped laughing, he mocked in an outrageous manner, ha ha ha. Looks like you dare not, huh, Peak Master Cha Bai. Do you think your taunts would be useful against me? Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak in the 5 Element sect, had been respected for more than half of his life. What kind of situation had he not seen before? With just one sentence, he had unraveled Duan Lingtian's intention. His tone was full of disdain. After Duan Lingtian's intention was unraveled, not only was he not angry, he continued to ask again in a joyful manner, then what if I bet with you that Hu Fei did not even manage to comprehend the 8th level intermediate fire concept at all? The 8th level intermediate fire concept? Cha Bai was taken aback. After a while, he began to laugh loudly, are you kidding me? Hu Fei, my direct disciple, is originally only a step away from comprehending the 8th level intermediate fire concept. Now that he's out of the profound assimilation formation, you're telling me that he has yet to comprehend the 8th level intermediate fire concept. As he said this, Cha Bai looked at Duan Lingtian with a sneer as if he was looking at God's biggest joke. Duan Lingtian did not answer Cha Bai's question. Instead, he continued to say nonchalantly, I'll bet with you that if Hu Fei's fire concept does not have any elevation and is still in the 7th level intermediate fire concept, you'll have to give me a piece of 7th level thunder concept fragment. However, if Hu Fei's fire concept has been raised up to the 8th level intermediate fire concept, I'll switch peak and become a disciple of Fire Peak instead. Moreover, I'll swear upon the 9 heavenly tribulation that I'll never betray you for the rest of my life. How's that? Duan Lingtian's words had clearly entered Hu Fei's ears. It stunned him for a moment as if he was hit by some realization. Could it be that my fire concept is really like what I've sensed? It really did not improve at all. Hu Fei's heart jolted as an ominous premonition slowly rose up in his heart. Even if that's true, how did this Duan Lingtian know about it? Hu Fei was completely baffled in this regard. From what he could see, that profound assimilation formation was left behind by a martial monarch powerhouse. It was something that was absolutely marvelous. Almost everybody who had entered it would gain great benefits from it. By right, he should not be excluded as well. Even if he really was excluded, how did this Duan Lingtian actually find out? Duan Lingtian's words were not only heard by Hu Fei. It was heard by Cha Bai, Qi Feng, and the rest of the people who were present as well. Duan Lingtian wanted to have a bet with Cha Bai that Hu Fei's fire concept was not elevated at all and still remained at the 7th level intermediate fire concept even after he had come out from the profound assimilation formation. However, if Hu Fei had a breakthrough, he had a lot more to lose. If he won, he would gain a piece of 7th level thunder concept fragment from Cha Bai. However, he would give himself away to Cha Bai, to Fire Peak, and swear by the 9 heavenly tribulation that he would never betray Fire Peak for the rest of his life if he lost. An uproar erupted right away. Other than Qi Yu and Huang Daniyu who were lost in their thoughts, the rest of the people, including Guo Chong, the sect leader of the 5-element sect, were agape. In their opinions, Duan Lingtian would definitely lose the bet that he had just made with Cha Bai. Perhaps, this Duan Lingtian actually doesn't want to stay in Wood Peak and wants to switch to Fire Peak instead. Maybe this bet is just an excuse. Peak Master Cha Bai must have made some serious promises to Duan Lingtian and asked him to switch to Fire Peak. That must be why he's tempted to do it now. It's just that he finds it difficult to blatantly betray Wood Peak, and he's scared that he'll become the second who and would be looked down by other people. That's why he's using this method to switch to Fire Peak instead. The 5-element sect's disciples who were present at the scene, including Tan Huan and Tian Zhen, could not help but wonder secretly. Not only that, they really could not figure out why Duan Lingtian would take the initiative to make such bet with Cha Bai. After all, it's apparent that he was the one going to lose this bet. Hu Fei had originally comprehended the 7th level intermediate fire concept. Not to mention the fact that he was only just a step away from entering the 8th level intermediate fire concept before he entered the profound assimilation formation. Even if he had just comprehended the 7th level intermediate fire concept right before he entered the profound assimilation formation, he would still definitely be able to comprehend the 8th level intermediate fire concept after he left the profound assimilation formation. However, at this moment, Duan Lingtian actually said that Hu Fei still remained at the same spot in his concept comprehension and that he was still at the 7th level intermediate fire concept even after he got out of the profound assimilation formation. This was almost impossible. Only Qi Yu and Huang Daniyu were looking at Duan Lingtian from afar while they were absorbed in their own thoughts. What is Duan Lingtian planning to do? Looking at Hu Fei's expression right now, don't tell me, Qi Yu observed carefully. Very soon, he noticed something was wrong with Hu Fei's expression. His heart jolted for a moment. The scene that was unfolding before his eyes made him feel even more certain that Duan Lingtian was purposely luring Cha Bai into his own grave. His intention was to obtain the 7th level thunder concept fragment from him. This little fellow. If you really need that thunder concept fragment, you can just tell me, you know. Looks like he doesn't want to owe me any favor, Chiyu muttered to himself. By the time he was done, he could not help but let out a sigh. I knew it. The smile on Duan Lingtian's face earlier didn't seem right at all. It's fishy indeed. Huang Daniu stared at Duan Lingtian with a knowing smile at the corner of his mouth. He had an expression that seemingly said, I knew it. I, your brother Niu, have long seen through you. Cha Bai was dazzled by Duan Lingtian's words. After a moment of silence, he finally regained his senses. His eyes glistened brightly as he stared at Duan Lingtian before he asked in a loud voice, Hey, are you serious? He had to admit that he was indeed very displeased with Duan Lingtian before this. However, that was because Duan Lingtian had humiliated his direct disciple, Hu Fei. If Duan Lingtian was a disciple of Fire Peak, he would not resent Duan Lingtian at all even if he had humiliated his direct disciple, Hu Fei. Instead, he would be proud that his Fire Peak had a protege that was more outstanding than his direct disciple. At this moment, Duan Lingtian just said that he would become his disciple and switch to Fire Peak if his direct disciple, Hu Fei, had comprehended the 8-level intermediate fire concept or higher. Moreover, he was willing to swear by the 9-9 heavenly tribulation and never betray his Fire Peak for the rest of his life. For a moment, Cha Bai was completely overwhelmed with joy. It was to the point that he did not even consider why Duan Lingtian would make such an absurd bet, why he was willing to sacrifice his entire life just to bet for a 7th-level thunder concept fragment. At this moment, he only knew that he would win without a doubt. Duan Lingtian would then have to switch over to Fire Peak. Perhaps, it was because of this reason that Duan Lingtian decided to use himself as the bargaining chip. Faced with Cha Bai's loud question, Duan Lingtian nodded his head and responded with a question while putting on a doubtful look, that's right. I wonder if you dare to bet with me, Peak Master Cha Bai. Since you already have the intention to switch to our Fire Peak, why would I refuse it? Duan Lingtian, don't you worry. As long as you come to our Fire Peak, Hu Fei and I will put all our disputes with you behind us and will not bring it up again. Not only that, I promise you that Fire Peak will never mistreat you. Cha Bai, who was so overjoyed that he did not see the bigger picture, answered with a smile. It was apparent that Cha Bai had agreed to Duan Lingtian's bet. Alright, Duan Lingtian smiled as well. It was a brilliant and wonderful smile. Wait, at this moment, Cha Bai's face suddenly scrunched up as he cried out loudly without any warning. Duan Lingtian frowned. Could it be that Cha Bai finally came to his senses? Or perhaps it was Hu Fei who came to his senses and told him everything, causing him to have a change of heart suddenly. In the next instance, Duan Lingtian knew that he had been thinking too much. Sect leader, please be the witness to the bet between Duan Lingtian and me. In the midst of his joy, Cha Bai did not forget to find Guo Chong, the sect leader of the 5-element sect, to be his witness. He did that not because he was afraid Duan Lingtian would go back on his words. However, he was afraid that Chiyu would intervene afterward. He was very clear about Chiyu's strength. He knew that he was definitely not a match for him. If Chiyu really wanted to bring Duan Lingtian who had already switched to Fire Peak back to Wood Peak, he really could not stop Chiyu at all. In the end, everything would be in vain. Guo Chong frowned as he looked at Chiyu immediately as if trying to ask for his opinion. Chiyu nodded his head. Guo Chong complied with Cha Bai's wishes when he saw Chiyu nodding his head. He immediately turned to look and shouted at Hu Fei who was lost in his own thoughts while he stood in the distance, Hu Fei. However, Hu Fei did not respond at all. He just stood there motionlessly like he was possessed. Hu Fei. Cha Bai became anxious right away when he saw that Hu Fei still did not respond. Slap. With just a few steps, Cha Bai walked forward and slapped him on the back of his head. It woke him up from his thoughts. After Hu Fei finally came to his senses, the first thing that entered his sight was Cha Bai who was standing before him. He hastily cried out in response, Master. What are you waiting for? Show your fire concept now. Cha Bai roared as he glared at him anxiously. His voice as loud as thunder. 909 Chapter 910, a hysterical Hu Fei. At this moment, Cha Bai was on tenterhooks. He feared that Duan Lingtian would regret the bet after Hu Fei had demonstrated his fire concept. If Duan Lingtian went back on his words, Fire Peak would lose a freak disciple who could help raise Fire Peak to become the first peak of the 5-element sect 3 years later. Yes, Hu Fei, who had suddenly heard Cha Bai's scolding, shuddered in shock. His mind was completely blank. With no time to think too much into it, he hastily nodded his head. He no longer dared to hesitate. Meanwhile, flames started to solidify into form from his body and rose up into the air. Then, it proceeded to envelop his entire being. It made him look just like a fire god. Whoosh! Concurrently, the heaven and earth energy began to fluctuate in the sky as the heaven and earth phenomenon gradually solidified and formed silhouettes of ancient horned dragons that emerged in front of everybody. All of them, including Duan Lingtian, immediately stared intensely at it. Duan Lingtian will definitely lose. This was the thought that was in almost everyone's minds. Although Duan Lingtian was the one who proposed the bet, they did not think he could win at all. They believed that Duan Lingtian had been persuaded by Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak, to leave Wood Peak and switch to Fire Peak. As for that bet, it was just a pretense to fool everybody. Only a few appeared to be absorbed in their thoughts. The first ones were naturally Qi Yu and Huang Danyu, followed by Guo Chong, the sect leader of the Five-Element sect, and Nangong Chen, his direct disciple. Both of them had a surprised yet doubtful look in their eyes. Obviously, they could sense that things were not as simple as it seemed. Very quickly, the silhouettes of the ancient horned dragons on top of Hu Fei's head gradually solidified into shape. The numbers kept increasing. 10, 20, 30, not long after, the number of the ancient horned dragons ceased to increase. The silhouettes of the ancient horned dragons circled around before they descended, coming into the views of the spectators clearly. Most of them narrowed their eyes as they stared in shock at the ancient horned dragon silhouettes that were in the sky. Some of them even thought that their visions had gone blurry, and they had seen wrongly. They could not stop themselves from lifting a hand to rub their eyes. However, after reconfirming it again a moment later, they finally realized that they had not seen wrongly at all. 80 ancient horned dragons. When Tian Zhen saw the 80 ancient horned dragons silhouettes in the air, he muttered, it really is the 7th level intermediate fire concept. But, how is this possible? The 7th level intermediate fire concept. That was exactly the concept that Hu Fei had just demonstrated. There was no difference from his concept before he entered the profound assimilation formation. In other words, Hu Fei showed no improvements at all before and after he went into the profound assimilation formation. He did not receive any benefits from it at all, not even a tiny bit. What's going on? For a time, be it Tiangu, the Peak Master of Earth Peak, Yu Fang, the Peak Master of Water Peak, or the young talents like Nangong Yi, a perplexed look could be seen on their faces. In their opinions, this was something that was almost impossible. However, the scene before them impacted their visual nerves and told them that everything that was happening was indeed true. Suddenly, a faint voice could be heard asking, did Peak Master Cha Bai just lost? Despite the low volume of the voice, it appeared to be exceptionally ear-piercing in the midst of the dead silence. It's you, Duan Lingtian. It must be you. What did you do to me? Without any warning, a hysterical roar reverberated in the air. It woke everyone up from their shock. It was none other than Hu Fei who had completely come back to his senses. He moved his eyes away from the 80 ancient horned dragon silhouettes on the sky as he glared at Duan Lingtian fiercely. He put on a manner that showed he meant business with Duan Lingtian. When he first came out of the profound assimilation formation, he had felt that something was wrong. At that time, he tried to sense his own fire concept, and he discovered that his fire concept did not seem any different from before he entered the profound assimilation formation. After a moment of pondering, he thought that it was just simply because he had just come out of the profound assimilation formation so he still could not sense the changes in his fire concept clearly. Later, when he saw how Tian Zhen, Tan Huan, and the others managed to demonstrate an elevation of 2 whole levels in their concept with his own eyes, he finally calmed down completely. In his opinion, there was no reason for him to not improve since the others had managed to improve. When Guo Chong called his name and asked him to demonstrate earlier, Duan Lingtian had suddenly stopped him and called his master a liar. Moreover, he even called for a bet with his master. Duan Lingtian bet that his fire concept had no improvement at all and still remained at the 7th level intermediate fire concept. At that time, he was completely perplexed. No matter how much he pondered about it, it still puzzled him as to why Duan Lingtian would claim he did not make any breakthrough at all in his concept. Then, coupled with what he had sensed, he instantly became a little hesitant. After that, he became lost in his thoughts, and he was shocked to the core by his master's sudden scolding, so he immediately demonstrated his fire concept in a hasty manner. The moment he saw that he was still in the 7th level intermediate fire concept, he became completely dumbstruck. Thoroughly and utterly dumbstruck. What the hell was going on right here? The instant he regained his senses, the first thing that appeared in his mind was Duan Lingtian. In his opinion, all of this must be the work of Duan Lingtian. Otherwise, how could Duan Lingtian possibly know that he had made no progress at all in the profound assimilation formation? Could it really be Duan Lingtian? When everyone saw Hu Fei shouting at Duan Lingtian, they shifted their eyes towards Duan Lingtian as well. They had clearly heard the bet that Duan Lingtian made with Cha Bai earlier. Judging from his words, it was as if he knew Hu Fei's fire concept did not make any breakthrough after coming out of the profound assimilation formation. In the beginning, when they heard the absurd bet that Duan Lingtian made, most of them had thought that he did that on purpose in order to use it as an excuse to switch over to Fire Peak and become Cha Bai's disciple. However, it was apparent at this moment that Duan Lingtian did not have such an intention at all. It was because after Hu Fei had entered the profound assimilation formation, it was indeed true that his fire concept did not have any breakthrough at all, and it still remained at the same level. At this moment, when they recalled the words that Duan Lingtian had said earlier, they felt like it was similar to a prophecy. When they heard Hu Fei's roar, the first thought that popped up in their minds was that Duan Lingtian had to have done something to Hu Fei earlier when they were still in the profound assimilation formation. He must have made sure that he could not use the concept energy to increase his fire concept comprehension level. Cha Bai's eyes turned blood red as he glared at Duan Lingtian. He asked in a deep voice, "Duan Lingtian, what the hell did you do to Hu Fei?" As the peak master of Fire Peak in the 5-element sect, this was the first time he was caught in such an unfavorable situation after being used to having authority for more than half his life. Moreover, it was in the hands of a young man who had not even entered his 30s yet. This made him feel extremely ashamed and furious. How he wished he could directly kill Duan Lingtian right now. However, the moment he noticed that Qi Yu, the peak master of Wood Peak's aura, was fixed on him, he knew that no matter how hard he exerted his power, he would still barely be able to touch Duan Lingtian at all. Due to this reason, all he could do was suppress the endless flame that was burning in his heart. What can I do to him? Faced with Cha Bai's question and the perplexed looks from all around him, Duan Lingtian said calmly, "Peak Master Cha Bai, everything must have evidence. You can't just simply make such a slanderous accusation." Duan Lingtian's words instantly enraged Cha Bai even more. Flying into rage out of humiliation, he growled, "If it's not you, then how did you know Hu Fei's fire concept would not have any improvement at all after coming out of the profound assimilation formation?" Everyone else could not help but secretly nod along to Cha Bai's words. That was right. It was already considered strange that Hu Fei came out of the profound assimilation formation with no improvement to his concept at all. Moreover, what was even stranger was the fact that Duan Lingtian actually knew Hu Fei's concept did not improve at all. Adding up these two together, one could not help but be swarmed with thoughts. Duan Lingtian did not reply to Cha Bai's question. Instead, he changed the topic and asked nonchalantly, "Peak Master Cha Bai, looking at you right now, are you, by any chance, regretting the bet that you've made with me? You even personally asked the sect leader to become a witness for that bet. Don't tell me you're going to deny it now." With a piercing glare, Cha Bai growled, "Naturally, I'll acknowledge that bet. However, no matter what, you must give Hu Fei an explanation. Give Me an explanation. And give Wood Peak an explanation." In the end, he even brought out Wood Peak's name to pressure Duan Lingtian. "Since you're willing to acknowledge the bet, then that's really great, Peak Master Cha Bai. However, I don't really trust your words. How about this, you give me that 7th level thunder concept fragment first, and I'll answer your question later, all right?" Duan Lingtian chuckled and spoke with a speed that was neither slow nor fast. "You." The moment he heard Duan Lingtian's words, Cha Bai flared up in rage. Once again, he was overcome with the urge to launch an attack towards Duan Lingtian directly. In the end, he did not do it out of his fear of Qi Yu, the peak master of Wood Peak. "Humph, I hope you'll be able to give me a satisfactory explanation later." Cha Bai took a deep breath and suppressed the anger that was burning to his limit. At the same time, he lifted a hand up and threw a purple fragment at Duan Lingtian. The 7th level thunder concept fragment. Duan Lingtian caught the fragment, and his eyes immediately lit up. He had comprehended a total of 4 concepts, and he also had 4 of these concept fragments in his hands. However, the thunder concept fragment that he had was of the lowest level among all the fragments that he possessed. That thunder concept fragment was actually obtained by killing the most powerful person in the imperial family of the Darken dynasty, by Nanshang, by using the talisman that was left behind by his cheapskate father. It was just a first-level thunder concept fragment. Previously, he decided to make a bet with Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak, so that he could scam a piece of high-grade thunder concept fragment from him. Now that the 7th-level thunder concept fragment was in his hands, Duan Lingtian immediately became happy. After Cha Bai watched Duan Lingtian toying with the 7th-level thunder concept fragment in his hands, he no longer made any moves. He just growled in a low voice instead, "Duan Lingtian, I've already given you the chip from our bet. Now, you must give Hu Fei and me an explanation. Give an explanation to our Fire Peak." 910 Chapter 911, Duan Lingtian's Thunder Concept. As soon as Cha Bai's words left his mouth, everyone's eyes immediately fell on Duan Lingtian. Hu Fei continued standing at the same spot. His body trembled slightly as he gritted his teeth. A pair of blood-red eyes that were filled with bitter hatred glared at Duan Lingtian intensely. At this moment, Hu Fei was like a poisonous snake that was lurking in the darkness, ready to attack Duan Lingtian at any given time. "Don't worry, Peak Master Cha Bai. Since I said that I'll give you an explanation, I'll definitely give you one." After Duan Lingtian put the 7th-level thunder concept fragment away, he took a long look at Cha Bai before he said, "Still, I have to thank you first for giving me the concept fragment, Peak Master Cha Bai." "Humph." Cha Bai snorted. His face darkened as Duan Lingtian tore his wound open. "Cut the nonsense. I really want to see what kind of explanation you'll give me." "Peak Master Cha Bai, you want an explanation on how I knew your useless disciple's concept did not make any progress, right?" Duan Lingtian asked while he looked at Hu Fei. There was no lack of provocation in his words. Hu Fei, who had focused all his anger towards Duan Lingtian for having no progress in his fire concept, immediately had a change in his expression the moment he heard Duan Lingtian call him useless. "Duan Lingtian, you're going to hell." Hu Fei could not hold it in any longer. With a hysterical cry, he charged towards Duan Lingtian at a high speed. It was similar to a lurking poisonous snake that was agitated and was ready to bite its prey without any warning. Whoosh! The moment Hu Fei charged out, the origin energy on his body erupted. After it merged with his 7th-level intermediate fire concept, it transformed into a flame that soared up into the sky and enveloped his body in it. Hu Fei currently resembled a fiery behemoth whose bloody mouth was wide open as he pounded towards Duan Lingtian as if he was about to swallow him whole. The heaven and earth energy in the sky swirled while the heaven and energy phenomenon began to solidify. Along with Hu Fei's movement, 180 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons pounded towards Duan Lingtian at a high speed. It had a very imposing demeanor. When Hu Fei, who resembled a fiery behemoth with the strength of 180 ancient horned dragons, charged out, he left a trail of explosions behind him. It caused a surge of terrifying airwaves as he passed through. Along with the airwaves, a hurricane raged and blew all of the furnishings in the palace all over the place. Some paintings were even torn off the walls and fell onto the floor with a loud crash. Die. In just a blink of an eye, Hu Fei, who had transformed into a fiery flame, had already reached in front of Duan Lingtian. With a hysterical cry, he punched out a fist like a meteor falling from the sky. The fist that was enveloped with flame crashed towards Duan Lingtian directly. He resembled a fiery behemoth that punched out a fist without mercy. With the power that was contained in the fist, Duan Lingtian would die, if not crippled, if he had gotten hit. Hu Fei. Horror dawned on Cha Bai instantly. He had never thought that Hu Fei would attack Duan Lingtian just like that. In his opinion, Duan Lingtian's innate ability was very powerful. Previously, he had easily wrapped Hu Fei and the Nangong twins from Gold Peak around his fingers. Now that Hu Fei suddenly attacked him, wasn't Hu Fei just digging his own grave? Just as everybody present, including Cha Bai, thought that Duan Lingtian would use his innate ability to create an illusion to delude Hu Fei again, Duan Lingtian made a move that took them all by surprise. Duan Lingtian did not bother to dodge at all in the face of that menacing Hu Fei. Origin energy began to erupt from his body. The vast origin energy quickly transformed into streaks of thunderbolts like purple snakes that wrapped around his body. It made him look like a thunder god that had just descended from the sky. Boom, 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 comma. As the thunderbolts wrapped around Duan Lingtian's body clashed against each other, a series of low rumbles from the thunder reverberated in the air, and it shook everyone to the core. Bang! A deafening thunder suddenly shook the entire palace and caused 3 young disciples from the water, fire and earth peaks who had a slightly lower cultivation base to immediately put their hands over their ears. Everyone saw Duan Lingtian also sent out a punch without any intention to dodge as Hu Fei charged over with his fiery fist. It was obvious that he wanted to clash directly with Hu Fei. When Duan Lingtian punched out his fist, streaks of flashing purple thunderbolts pulsated around his fist and interlaced to become an electrified wire netting. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian and Hu Fei's fists finally met each other. Boom! The fist that was entwined with streaks of purple thunderbolts like electrical snakes clashed with the fist that was wrapped in flames that looked like fiery snakes. It instantly created a loud thundering noise. Boom! 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 The moment when Duan Lingtian and Hu Fei's fist collided with each other, the streaks of purple lightning bolts also collided with the burning flames as it set off a series of horrendous explosions. The moment the explosion was set off, hurricanes surged up again as it swept all over the place. The location Duan Lingtian and Hu Fei were standing at were in the eye of the hurricane. Cracks started to appear on the floor below their feet, and it stretched out in all directions. It covered the entire palace in just a blink of an eye. It resembled a gigantic spider web. Furthermore, the quakes had also shattered many of the windows on both sides of the palace. The pillars in the palace were also being shaken as if they were about to collapse at any time. However, nobody paid any attention to this at all. At this moment, all of the people present were staring fixedly at the 2 young men who clashed directly with their fists. Their robes were billowing, and their hair ties were ripped apart causing their long hairs to fly. Boom! 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 Under the watchful eyes of the spectators, the streaks of dense purple thunderbolt constantly intertwined and produced a series of terrifying thunder sound. It clamped down on the burning flames in one fell swoop and snuffed it out completely. Crack! A clear and crisp bone-cracking sound resonated in the air. The people present at the scene shuddered upon hearing it. In the next moment, everybody could see Duan Lingtian's body suddenly leaned forward and the dense purple thunderbolts that were intertwined with his fist rolled over the flames on Hu Fei's fist like he was crushing dry weeds. The instant the bone-cracking sound echoed in the air, Hu Fei let out a grunt of pain. In the next second, he was sent flying like an arrow leaving the bow before he was slammed against the wall of the palace as if he was pushed by a tremendous force. Wham! After that loud thunderous sound, Hu Fei's body slid down the wall. His body was curled up in a fetal position as he trembled in pain. Arg! Arg! The moment he inhaled, he spat out mouthfuls of blood. The fresh blood around his body turned into a small bloody stream around him. It truly created a ghastly sight. The entire place was deadly silent. Suddenly, a nonchalant voice broke the silence. What a pleasant feeling. It was none other than Duan Lingtian who was muttering to himself while he stretched his limbs after sending Hu Fei flying with his fist. The dense interlocking thunderbolts on his fist had already vanished without a trace. Everyone present was completely petrified. Pleasant. Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak, looked horrified as he rushed towards Hu Fei to check on his wounds. Meanwhile, everyone else immediately shifted their gazes to Duan Lingtian as soon as they regained their senses. Good job, lad. Qi Yu's eyes lit up as he stared at Duan Lingtian in astonishment. Qi Yu originally thought Duan Lingtian would use his innate ability and create an illusion when he saw Duan Lingtian was about to attack Hu Fei. It did not even cross his mind that Duan Lingtian would not use his innate ability. Moreover, he did not even bother to dodge. He actually directly confronted Hu Fei and sent him flying with just a blow. Duan Lingtian's cultivation base was on par with Hu Fei's. They were both at the 7th level void interpretation. However, the concepts that they had comprehended were definitely not on the same level. Hu Fei's comprehension was at the 7th level intermediate fire concept. However, the single thunder concept that Duan Lingtian had cast earlier could actually suppress Hu Fei. That was at least an 8th level intermediate thunder concept, or perhaps a 9th level intermediate thunder concept. Duan Lingtian, you bastard. You actually have such a powerful thunder concept. Huang Danyu's eyes were as wide as saucers. Slightly stunned, he stared at Duan Lingtian. He was completely taken aback by the strength that Duan Lingtian had displayed earlier. That punch was like a punch from the thunder god. It instantly sent Hu Fei, who was charging forward menacingly, flying back. Duan Lingtian's blow was clean and neat. Even the heaven and earth phenomenon above his head did not have time to form yet. That was at least an 8th level intermediate thunder concept. Guo Chong narrowed his eyes. Amazement could be seen on his face as he looked at Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian, a Wood Peak disciple, was a variant that possessed an innate ability. His cultivation base was at the 7th level void interpretation, and he had comprehended the 3rd level intermediate wind concept. This was his understanding of Duan Lingtian prior to this day. Previously, he had thought that Duan Lingtian's strength relied mostly on his innate ability. If he did not have this innate ability, let alone his own 2 direct disciples, Duan Lingtian could not even be compared to Hu Fei from Fire Peak. However, Duan Lingtian had given him the surprise of his life today. Without relying on his innate ability, he used just one blow to directly confront Hu Fei and sent Hu Fei, who had the advantage from striking first, flying. The entire process was neat and efficient. It was not sloppy at all. So it turns out that this Duan Lingtian did not only comprehend the wind concept but the thunder concept as well. The 3rd level intermediate wind concept is the weaker concept that he has comprehended. The intermediate thunder concept that he has is actually his true trump card. Tianjiyu gasped in surprise and muttered to himself. And to think that I actually thought the most powerful concept that he has is the 3rd level intermediate wind concept. Looks like this time, the concept that he has raised by entering the profound assimilation formation is actually the thunder concept. Yu Fang inhaled deeply before continuing. In other words, his intermediate thunder concept was actually already at the 6th or 7th level even before he entered the profound assimilation foundation. Due to the reason that Duan Lingtian had shown his wind concept when he first arrived at Wood Peak of the 5-element sect, it was no surprise that the other peak masters knew that he had comprehended the 3rd level intermediate wind concept. 911 Chapter 912, You must be taking a wild guess. Apart from Tianjiyu and Yu Fang who were taken by surprise, the other 5-element sect's young disciples were stupefied as well. Duan Lingtian's so strong. I thought his innate ability is his only move. I didn't expect that he's actually so powerful even without using his innate ability. Before this, I heard that he has only comprehended the 3rd level intermediate wind concept. Now that I think about it, it seems like he's really good at concealing his strength. The thunder concept that he used to send Hu Fei flying with just a blow must at least be at the 8th level intermediate thunder concept. Who knows, it could even be at the 9th level intermediate thunder concept. Hints of dread could be seen in the eyes of the other young disciples, including Tian Zhen and Tan Huan, as they looked at Duan Lingtian. This Duan Lingtian has actually comprehended such a strong thunder concept. Nan Gongyi lifted his brow. His face slightly darkened as he muttered, if he uses both the thunder concept and 3rd level intermediate wind concept at the same time, even without that innate ability of his, I'm still not a match for him unless I've comprehended the 1st level advanced water concept. At this moment, Nan Gongyi began to feel a slight sense of heavy pressure on him. Although he could clearly feel the tremendous change in his water concept after coming out of the profound assimilation formation, he still had no idea how much progress he had actually made. He could only find out how much progress his water concept had made by demonstrating it. However, there was one thing that he was sure of. It was at least at the 9th level intermediate water concept. Or perhaps, the 1st level advanced water concept, which was also known as the void transformation concept. Nangong Chen, who was standing next to Nangong Yi, had his eyes fixed on Duan Lingtian. The battle intent that was radiating off his body was so intense. It seemed like he could not wait to have 300 rounds of battles with Duan Lingtian. In a distance, by the corner of the palace, Hu Fei's wounds began to recover slowly after Cha Bai had fed him a wound-curing medicinal pill. The look Hu Fei's face was extremely wretched. Other than bitter hatred, his gaze that unconsciously swept across the purple figure in the distance was also filled with a hint of dread that came from the bottom of his heart. If he had been defeated by Duan Lingtian's innate ability today, he could only acknowledge his defeat. After all, this was not his first time being defeated by the innate ability. However, he was defeated by Duan Lingtian in a direct confrontation today. Moreover, it was Hu Fei himself that struck first to gain the upper hand. A sense of helplessness instantly rose up in his heart. All the same, resentment rose up in his heart as well. If this Duan Lingtian didn't tamper with the profound assimilation formation in the first place, I would have already mastered the 9th level intermediate fire concept. If I have the 9th level intermediate fire concept, there's no reason for me to fear him anymore. When Hu Fei thought of this, his resentment towards Duan Lingtian immediately multiplied. In his mind, he was almost completely sure that Duan Lingtian had done something when he was in the profound assimilation formation that caused his fire concept to have no progress at all. In his opinion, if Duan Lingtian did not tamper with the profound assimilation formation, he would not have lost to Duan Lingtian earlier. Because of this, he hated Duan Lingtian. How he wished he could just rip Duan Lingtian apart into thousands of pieces and smashed his bones into dust. Master. Hu Fei lifted his head and looked at Cha Bai, who was in close proximity. His eyes turned red as tears instantly welled up. With a quivering voice, he pleaded, "Why you must help avenge me. It's Duan Lingtian who destroyed me and stopped me from obtaining the 9th level intermediate fire concept in the profound assimilation formation." Once he was finished, his face was completely filled with intense hatred. "Don't worry." Cha Bai nodded his head glumly. Even if Hu Fei did not say anything, he did not plan to let Duan Lingtian go that easily. During the Battle of the Five Peaks, Duan Lingtian had humiliated his direct disciple, and now he caused his direct disciple to gain nothing at all from the profound assimilation formation. Apart from that, he had also scammed a 7th level thunder concept fragment from him. Moreover, he even inflicted serious injuries on his direct disciple. This was a provocation, a blatant provocation. Ever since he, Cha Bai, became the peak master of Fire Peak in the 5-element sect, this was his first time being provoked like that. Duan Lingtian. Cha Bai walked towards Duan Lingtian slowly. His pair of eyes were gleaming icily. "Now, you must explain to me clearly. How did you know that Hu Fei would gain nothing in the profound assimilation formation? Or did you do something foul that caused Hu Fei to gain nothing at all?" When he reached the end of his sentence, his tone was so icy that one could even feel it in his bones. The moment Cha Bai's words left his mouth, everybody's gaze, including Qi Yu, landed on Duan Lingtian. Actually, they were also curious about the things that Cha Bai had brought up. Nobody knew in advance that Hu Fei did not make any progress at all in the profound assimilation formation, not even Hu Fei himself. However, Duan Lingtian casually said it out as if he was a person with foresight. "Peak Master Cha Bai, you've overestimated me by saying these words. Do you really think that a small young kid like me could tamper with the profound assimilation formation that was left behind by a martial monarch powerhouse?" Duan Lingtian shook his head. The way that he was looking at Cha Bai was as if he was looking at an idiot. "Humph." Cha Bai snorted, "Stop twisting the situation. If you didn't tamper with it, how are you so sure that Hu Fei did not make any progress at all in the profound assimilation formation? Or are you going to tell me that you can see through the level of his concept comprehension without him having to demonstrate his fire concept?" A sneer could be seen on his face as the last question came out of his mouth. "Peak Master Cha Bai, I can answer your question right now." Duan Lingtian was not bothered by the sneer on Cha Bai's face. The moment he finished saying this, he moved his gaze towards Nangong Yi, who was standing nearby. "Nangong Yi, can you do me a favor please?" Nangong Yi was a little perplexed when he noticed Duan Lingtian had shifted his gaze towards him. The moment he heard Duan Lingtian's words, he immediately nodded his head, of course. Although he was not particularly fond of Duan Lingtian, he did not harbor any bad feelings towards him as well. "Now, please demonstrate the water concept of your transformation. Just a little demonstration will do. Please remember to retract it before the heaven and earth phenomenon is mobilized," Duan Lingtian told Nangong Yi. The moment these words left Duan Lingtian's mouth, the entire place became deathly quiet. Some of them could guess what Duan Lingtian was trying to do, but they were not very sure. After all, it was something that one could not imagine. And that included Nangong Yi himself. Interesting, Nangong Yi smiled and took a stride forward. "Speaking of this, I don't even know how much my water concept has improved after I came out from the profound assimilation formation. I'm curious if there's anyone who can see through the improvement of my water concept before I even mobilize the heaven and earth phenomenon." As he finished saying this, the air around Nangong Yi began to tremble slightly under the watchful eyes of the crowd. The faint mist that instantly rose up into the sky began to intertwine around his body as it continued to roll around and rise up in the air. The moment the mist appeared, Duan Lingtian spoke out, "All right, enough." When Nangong Yi heard Duan Lingtian's words, he instantly retracted his water concept. With a stunned look, he asked, "This is enough." After all, he was only beginning to gain his momentum earlier. He had not even demonstrated his real water concept yet. The heaven and earth energy did not even have time to respond. Yeah, Duan Lingtian nodded his head and immediately shifted his attention to Cha Bai. Calmly, he asked, Peak Master Cha Bai, can you see what level Nangong Yi's water concept is at after coming out of the profound assimilation formation? Pissed. When Cha Bai heard Duan Lingtian's question, he immediately burst out laughing. Don't tell me you can see it. From his words, it was obvious that he was admitting that he could not see it. Yes, I can. Under the stunned gaze of Cha Bai, Duan Lingtian nodded his head in response. He turned towards Nangong Yi and flashed him a smile. Nangong Yi, your water concept has been raised to the 9th level intermediate concept. 9th level intermediate concept. The instant Duan Lingtian's words left his mouth, everyone, including Cha Bai and Hu Fei, shifted their attention towards Nangong Yi. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. Yer, show your water concept and see whether Duan Lingtian is correct, Guo Chong told Nangong Yi. At this moment, even him, the sect leader of 5-element sect, could not stop the shock from filling his eyes. This was his first time hearing that somebody could actually see through a person's concept level under such conditions. Yes, master. Upon hearing Guo Chong's words, Nangong Yi did not dare to slack. The air around his body once again trembled, mists began to appear again before finally transforming into a wave of turquoise ripple that shrouded him entirely. Swoosh. At the same time, the heaven and earth phenomenon on top of Nangong Yi's head gradually solidified into form. It finally transformed into 100 ancient horned dragons. Just with his concept alone, he managed to mobilize the heaven and earth energy and brought together 100 ancient horned dragons. That was exactly the sign of the 9th level void interpretation concept. It's indeed the 9th level intermediate water concept. Tian Zhen exclaimed loudly in surprise. After he had retracted his gaze from the 100 ancient horned dragon silhouettes, he immediately looked at Duan Lingtian. His eyes were filled with bewilderment. It's actually the 9th level intermediate water concept. Nangong Yi sighed as if he was a little disappointed and dejected. It was obvious that his goal was the void transformation concept. However, soon afterward, Nangong Yi regained his senses. Just like the others, he looked at Duan Lingtian and could not help but ask curiously, Duan Lingtian, how did you manage to see it? Other than Cha Bai and Hu Fei, whose faces were rather glum, a perplexed look could be seen on everyone's faces. I'll tell you later. Duan Lingtian laughed and looked at Cha Bai. Peak Master Cha Bai, are you satisfied with my explanation now? Earlier, when Hu Fei made a slight demonstration of his fire concept, I already saw that he had no improvement in his fire concept at all, Duan Lingtian replied. Humph, who doesn't know that Nangong Yi will be at the 9th level intermediate water concept or 1st level advanced level water concept after he came out of the profound assimilation formation? You're merely making a wild guess. Cha Bai replied with disdain. 912 Chapter 913, Huang Danyu's Earth Concept. Wild guess. Cha Bai's words left Duan Lingtian stunned for a moment before he burst out laughing again. This time, he realized that more than half of the people present had begun to look at him weirdly with doubtful gazes after they heard Cha Bai's words. It was apparent that they were all shaken by Cha Bai's words. No matter which level you said Nangong Yi's comprehension is at, it doesn't matter if it's the 9th level intermediate wind concept or the 1st level advanced wind concept, you still have a 50-50 chance of getting it right. Cha Bai looked at Duan Lingtian and sneered. From what I can see, you're just lucky. Look at mine then, a cold voice suddenly interjected and eclipsed Cha Bai's laughter. It was Nangong Chen who was standing at the side all this time. He strode forward as he looked at Duan Lingtian and opened his usually taciturn mouth. I don't know whether I've comprehended the 9th level intermediate Earth concept or the 1st level advanced Earth concept after coming out of the profound assimilation formation. Since Peak Master Cha Bai said that Duan Lingtian is merely making a wild guess while looking at Senior Brother Yi's concept, I wonder if Duan Lingtian will be able to get it right this time. The instant his words left his mouth, everybody, including Duan Lingtian, shifted their gazes to him. The spotlight immediately turned to him. The 5-element sect's young disciples, including Tian Zhen and Tan Huan, constantly looked at both Duan Lingtian and Nangong Chen. Duan Lingtian. Huang Danyu looked at Duan Lingtian. His face was filled with confidence as he said loudly, if you can see Nangong Chen's concept clearly, but Peak Master Cha Bai still insists that you're merely making wild guesses, you can look at mine next. The instant Huang Danyu's words left his mouth, Cha Bai's face changed immediately. Was this not like him trying to say that Cha Bai was deliberately accusing Duan Tian? Let us wait till he manages to see through the concept that Nangong Chen has comprehended first. Cha Bai sneered. Duan Tian nodded and flashed a smile at Huang Daniu before he looked at Nangong Chen. You may start now. Nangong Chen nodded his head. The floor beneath his feet immediately trembled, and a khaki energy rose up from the surroundings of his body immediately. It emitted an intense and majestic aura. All right, that's enough, Duan Tian said. When Nangong Chen heard this, he retracted the earth concept that had not mobilized the heaven and earth energy yet. Congratulations. You've already comprehended the first level advanced earth concept. Duan Tian congratulated Nangong Chen. With his current spiritual energy, and his experience from the 2 reincarnations of the rebirth martial emperor, he could easily discern someone's concept level as long as they let out their concept aura. It was similar to how he could easily use his spiritual energy to probe at others' cultivation bases. First level advanced earth concept. The moment Duan Tian's words left his mouth, the place instantly became deathly quiet. Guo Chong, the sect leader of 5 Element sect, was the first one to react. His eyes shone brightly as he looked at Nangong Chen. Chenur, you. Before he could even finish his sentence, Nangong Chen's earth concept around his body had already risen. Khaki energy continued to soar up into the sky, all the way up to its limit. Whoosh! The heaven and earth energy bubbled in the air. In just a second, it accumulated into a clear heaven and earth phenomenon. There was a total of 200 ancient horned dragons in the air. He mobilized the heaven and earth energy with just his concept, and he managed to converge them into a total of 200 ancient horned dragons. That was the sign of the first level void transformation concept. It's indeed the first level advanced earth concept. Senior brother Chen is so powerful. He actually managed to rise up 2 levels and reach the first level advanced earth concept in just one go after coming out from the profound assimilation formation. With senior brother Chen's current strength, it's already horrifying enough even if he doesn't rely on earth energy. I wonder how ghastly his strength is if he borrows earth energy. After Tianjiu, the peak master of Earth Peak, cried out in astonishment, the group of young disciples behind him could not stop themselves from whispering to each other. All of them had one similarity at the moment, all of them had a bewildered look on their faces. Haha, well done. Guo Chong could not suppress the laughter rising from his throat when he saw his own direct disciple manage to progress so much after coming out of the profound assimilation formation. Nangong Chen still looked cold as usual. However, Duan Tian could see that there was a hint of astonishment in the depth of his eyes. It was apparent that Nangong Chen's inside was not as cold as he usually showed on the outside. Congratulations, sect leader. Tianjiu and Yu Feng congratulated Guo Chong with a smile on their faces. Sigh. Nangong Yi, who was standing by the side, could not help but let out a sigh after casting a glance at Nangong Chen. Not only were the 2 of them twins, they were also born to be rivals. Since they were young, the both of them had always competed with each other. However, the number of his losses were more than his wins. It had always been like this. It was like a curse that was hard to break. After shifting his gaze away from Nangong Chen to look at Cha Bai, Chi Yu, the peak master of Wood Peak, asked with a sneer on the corner of his mouth, Cha Bai, do you still think that Duan Tian's merely making a wild guess? Although his voice was not particularly loud, it managed to enter everyone's ears. Everyone immediately shifted their attention to Cha Bai. Cha Bai's face turned slightly glum instantly. Did Duan Tian really make a wild guess? Initially, when Duan Tian saw through the real concept level that Nangong Yi had comprehended, he indeed felt that Duan Tian was making a wild guess. However, he began to doubt himself now. However, since things had developed to this point, how could he show his uncertainty just like that? Humph. Cha Bai swept an indifferent glance at Chi Yu as he snorted, Chi Yu, you're right. Even until now, I still think he's merely making wild guesses. It's not that difficult to get 2 correct. How about 3 then? Standing by the side, Huang Daniu, who could no longer stand it, smirked as he looked at Cha Bai scornfully. We'll see after he manages to see through your concept. A chilly look flashed across Cha Bai's eyes. However, his face remained calm on the outside as he replied nonchalantly. Without wasting any time, Huang Daniu looked towards Duan Tian and immediately called out, Duan Tian. Duan Tian nodded his head, but he did not ask Huang Daniu to demonstrate his earth concept immediately. Instead, He looked at Cha Bai and said coldly, Peak Master Cha Bai, before I look at Danyu's concept level, there's something I want to confirm. If I can really see through his concept level, can I stop giving you any more explanation? Duan Lingtian greatly emphasized the word explanation. There was no lack of sarcasm in his words. As long as you can see through the exact concept level that Huang Danyu has comprehended after coming out from the profound assimilation formation, you'll only need to look at one more Fire Peak disciple that I'll bring over later from Fire Peak. You don't have to give me any more explanation after that, Cha Bai's replied nonchalantly as a gleam flashed across his eyes. Very well, Duan Lingtian nodded his head. Since the sect leader is here as well, I'm sure a dignified peak master of Fire Peak like you would never try and lie to me. Humph. Cha Bai snorted coldly. An icy gleam flashed across the depth of his eyes as if it was about to devour a certain somebody. Danyu, you may start now. Duan Lingtian looked at Huang Danyu. Huang Danyu instantly demonstrated his earth concept in a timely manner. He demonstrated for just a second before he immediately retracted it again. The heaven and earth energy was not mobilized at all, let alone forming a heaven and earth phenomenon. Just as Huang Danyu retracted his earth concept that was barely demonstrated, and everyone's eyes shifted towards Duan Lingtian burst out laughing without any warning, haha. Danyu, you're really a monster. What? Huang Danyu's eyes lit up. Then, as if he was hit by a realization, he asked excitedly, don't tell me that I, Brother Niu, have really comprehended the 9th level intermediate earth concept. If that's true, then I, Brother Niu, will be the first genius who has managed to raise my concept 3 levels higher after coming out of the profound assimilation formation. Before Huang Danyu entered the profound assimilation formation, it was no secret that he had only comprehended the 6th level intermediate earth concept. Everyone present at the scene knew this well. Pissed. The moment Huang Danyu's words left his mouth, Cha Bai burst out laughing at instantly. 3 levels? Are you daydreaming now? When Huang Danyu was glaring at Cha Bai, Duan Lingtian opened his mouth again. Danyu, since somebody thinks that you're merely daydreaming, why don't you show him how you're going to turn this daydream into reality? I'm curious as to what kind of expression he'll be wearing later. If he really has comprehended the 9th level intermediate earth concept, then I won't bring another disciple from Fire Peak, and you, Duan Lingtian, no longer have to explain. Cha Bai smirked. No matter what, he absolutely refused to believe that Huang Danyu would be able to elevate his 6th level intermediate earth concept to the 9th level intermediate earth concept just by entering the profound assimilation formation one time. Alright, you're the one who said this yourself. Upon hearing Cha Bai's words, Duan Lingtian laughed before turning towards Huang Danyu. Danyu, let Peak Master Cha Bai see your transformed earth concept clearly, shall we? Haha, alright, Huang Danyu laughed loudly. He had absolute faith in Duan Lingtian. Since Duan Lingtian said that he had comprehended the 9th level intermediate earth concept, then he must have comprehended the 9th level intermediate earth concept. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the khaki energy around Huang Danyu's body soared up immediately. It radiated waves and waves of vast and majestic aura that constantly rose up to the sky. Whoosh! The heaven and earth energy whirled in the air before it finally converged into a heaven and earth phenomenon with 100 ancient horned dragons. It really is the 9th level intermediate earth concept. Tianjiu exclaimed loudly in surprise. At this moment, everybody, except Duan Lingtian, Huang Danyu, and Qiyu, who appeared to be calm as if he had long believed the words that Duan Lingtian said, was gaping in shock as they stared at the heaven and earth phenomenon above Huang Danyu's head. It was like they had seen something that was incredibly amazing. Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak, was the first to speak. How's this even be possible? Cha Bai kept shaking his head. He could not believe that this was real. Danyu, looks like you're the person who had snatched Hu Fei's good fortune from him in the profound assimilation formation. That Hu Fei did not even get a cent from the profound assimilation formation. But look at you, you actually managed to raise 3 levels of your earth concept. Duan Lingtian smiled a bright and brilliant smile. Hu Fei, who was nearby, already had a glum look on his face. The instant he heard Duan Lingtian's words, he was so agitated that he threw up another mouthful of blood. 913 Chapter 914, Everything is going smoothly according to my wish. This means the profound assimilation formation has good eyes and knows that I, Brother Niu, is a man of great potential. As for that Hu Fei, he's just an ungrateful bastard. Perhaps that's why the profound assimilation formation turned its nose up at the sight of him. Huang Daniu grinned happily. The moment his gaze landed on Hu Fei, it immediately turned cold. Barf! Hu Fei, who had just wiped the blood off his mouth, became so distressed that he spat out another mouthful of blood the second he heard Huang Daniu's words. His face was horrendously pale. Huang Daniu, you're going to hell. Cha Bai's face instantly darkened. A wave of majestic aura emanated out of his body and swept out instantly. It pressed down on Huang Daniu without any warning. Unfortunately, it was already blown away before his aura managed to reach Huang Daniu. Swish! A figure appeared in front of Huang Daniu. It was none other than the Peak Master of Wood Peak, Qi Yu. Wham! The second Duan Lingtian saw Qi Yu materialized in front of Huang Daniu, he immediately heard a loud sound resonating in the air. What he saw next was Cha Bai being sent flying backward like an arrow that left the bowstring before he smashed through the wall of the palace and disappeared before his eyes. A huge hole immediately appeared on the wall. Qi Yu! A cry that was filled with rage echoed from behind the wall. What followed next was a dusty Cha Bai who returned to the palace. He glared at Qi Yu viciously. However, he did not make any move at all. Scram! When Qi Yu saw how audacious Cha Bai was to make his way back again, he glared fiercely at him. Qi Yu was as terrifying as the Buddha's warrior attendant, and his deterrent force was very obvious. Cha Bai's face darkened. He eventually bit his lips and brought Hu Fei and the other Fire Peak disciple to leave the palace together. They disappeared before everyone's eyes. Duan Lingtian, what's the level of your thunder concept? Why don't you show it to all of us? Guo Chang asked Duan Lingtian. As for the things that had happened earlier, he acted like he did not see anything at all. In other words, he had chosen to ignore them. Upon hearing Guo Chang's words, everybody's gaze moved to Duan Lingtian immediately. This time, among the 10 young talents who had come out of the profound assimilation formation, apart from Hu Fei who made no progress at all, Huang Daniu and Nangong Chen both had made great progress. Before Huang Daniu entered the profound assimilation formation, he had only comprehended the 6th level intermediate earth concept. However, when he came out of it, he had already made it to the 9th level intermediate earth concept. Even Duan Lingtian could not help but feel shocked over this matter. Huang Daniu's progress had far exceeded his expectations. Or perhaps, Daniu's body is well suited to the earth concept, therefore, his comprehension of the earth concept is far better than other people. Duan Lingtian could only come up with this answer after he ransacked the 2 reincarnations of the rebirth martial emperor's memories. Before Nangong Chen entered the profound assimilation formation, he had already comprehended the 8th-level intermediate earth concept. When he came out, he had already reached the 1st-level advanced earth concept. Although his earth concept was only raised by 2 levels, the strength that he managed to elevate was far beyond Huang Daniu. That was a matter of course. The 1st-level advanced earth concept was far stronger than the 9th-level intermediate earth concept by 100 ancient horned dragons. The 2 of them were not on the same level at all. However, at this moment, be it Huang Daniu or Nangong Chen, both of them had their eyes fixed on Duan Lingtian. Looks like I have no other choice but to show my strength today. When Duan Lingtian saw the situation before his eyes, he laughed wryly to himself. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the air surrounding Duan Lingtian suddenly surged and streaks of thunderbolts that resembled purple electrical snakes appeared immediately. It was streaks of solidified thunderbolts. The thunderbolts kept increasing in number and continuously clashed with each other. It created a series of low thunderous sound. That was the thunder concept. Boom, 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 boom. A series of thunder resonated in the air. The purple thunderbolts around Duan Lingtian also formed layers of electrical webs that shrouded his entire being. It made him look like a thunder god. The thunder god had descended on earth, and every corner of earth would shake in fear. Whoosh! The heaven and earth energy above Duan Lingtian's head whirled, and the heaven and earth phenomenon gradually solidified into form. Silhouettes of ancient horned dragons began to emerge, and it was reflected in everybody's eyes. 10, 20, 30, the number of the ancient horned dragons kept increasing. Soon after, the number finally stopped increasing. It's the strength of 100 ancient horned dragons. 9th level intermediate thunder concept. When Huang Daniu saw the 100 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons in the sky, he could not help but exclaim in surprise. The 9th level intermediate thunder concept. Everybody instantly focused their eyes on Duan Lingtian again. Apart from astonishment in the depth of their eyes, there was only more astonishment. The purple-clad young man before them appeared to be only around 25 years old. His real age did not exceed 30 at all. A martial artist who was barely in his 30s but had already comprehended the 9th-level void interpretation concept. Although the profound assimilation formation did help, his comprehension could be considered as very good in a first-class and second-class sect, let alone a third-class sect like the five-element sect. Wow, this is really unexpected. Not only does Duan Ling Tian possess that unpredictable innate ability, he even has such a good comprehension when it comes to concept as well. It's no surprise. He's a variant after all. I heard that a variant who possesses an innate ability like Duan Ling Tian is also known as God's favorite, you know. God's favorite. The name really fits Duan Ling Tian like a glove. The four water and earth peak disciples, including Tian Zhen and Tan Huan, exclaimed in surprise. Even Tian Jiyu, the peak master of earth peak, and Yu Fang, the peak master of water peak, were not an exception. At this moment, their gaze that was trained on Duan Ling Tian was filled with a hint of complicated look. How good would it be if he was a disciple of their earth or water peak instead? However, a dream was always beautiful while the reality was always harsh. Would Peak really lucked out this time? With a tacit understanding, the two of them thought secretly to themselves. Duan Ling Tian, what's the level of your thunder concept before you entered the profound assimilation formation? Qi Yu asked curiously as he looked at Duan Ling Tian. Everybody, including Guo Chong, instantly shifted their eyes towards Duan Ling Tian. They were curious about this as well. 7th level, a glimpse of brilliance flashed across Duan Ling Tian's eyes. Haha, the moment Duan Ling Tian's words left his mouth, Huang Daniu laughed out loud. Duan Ling Tian, you're much better than me in every single aspect. However, this time, it looks like you didn't gain as many benefits as I, brother Niu, did in the profound assimilation formation. Before your brother Niu, I, entered the profound assimilation formation, my comprehension was at the 6th level intermediate earth concept. After I came out, I'm now at the 9th level intermediate earth concept. Huang Daniu grinned widely when he reached the end of his sentence. Ever since he met with Duan Ling Tian, he was always a step behind Duan Ling Tian. It made him feel a little dejected. He finally had an opportunity to sit on Duan Ling Tian's head now. He was absolutely overjoyed from the bottom of his heart. When Duan Ling Tian saw how Huang Daniu was blowing his own trumpet in front of him, Duan Ling Tian merely rolled his eyes at him. He did not bother paying him any attention at all. If Huang Daniu found out that he was only at the elementary thunder concept before he entered the profound assimilation formation, who knew what his expression would be like? Of course, Duan Ling Tian would not expose himself just like that. Becoming rich while staying silent was the most virtuous way after all. Due to Huang Daniu's playful antics, the gazes that were on Duan Ling Tian slowly shifted away. He was no longer in the limelight. Although it was considered quite good being able to elevate his 7th level thunder concept 2 levels higher after entering the profound assimilation formation, they thought Duan Ling Tian was still far behind compared to Huang Daniu and Nangong Chen's progress. Of course, this was because none of them knew about the real changes that happened to Duan Ling Tian. If they had found out about it, they would most probably stand there dumbfounded the entire day. The profound assimilation formation is really weird this time. First, it ran continuously for 60 hours. After that, there's actually someone who did not benefit from it at all. Guo Chong knitted his brows together. He kept feeling like this matter was a little fishy. Perhaps, the reason why the profound assimilation formation ran for 60 continuous hours is related to Hu Fei. After all, out of the 10 people who entered the profound assimilation formation, Hu Fei's the only one that had a problem. It's like he entered the profound assimilation formation for no reason at all. Tian Jiyu voiced out his speculation. Yeah, I think this is very likely. Yu Fang nodded her head in agreement. Indeed, Qi Yu agreed as well. The corners of Duan Ling Tian's mouth unconsciously twitched a little upon hearing the words from the 4 peak masters. He did not expect Hu Fei would somehow become his scapegoat. If Hu Fei found out about the truth, he would most likely be so aggravated that he would throw up at least 3 liters of blood until he died from lack of blood. Alright, let us call it a day. We'll depart on time 2 weeks later, Guo Chong added. The moment the words left his mouth, he swept a glance at Qi Yu, Tian Jiyu and Yu Fang. It was apparent that his last sentence was aimed towards the 3 of them. The 3 of them nodded their heads before leading their disciples back to their own peaks. Are we going to the secret place that the martial emperor left behind in 2 weeks' time? Perhaps the Five Element sect's young disciples, including Huang Daniu, had no idea what the words, "we depart in 2 weeks" uttered by Guo Chong meant, but Duan Lingtian definitely knew what it meant. This time, the reason why Five Element sect was so generous that they opened the profound assimilation formation was undoubtedly for the sake of the secret treasure that the martial emperor had left behind. There was something in the secret treasure that the Five Element sect wanted urgently. The thing that the Five Element sect wanted the most was undoubtedly the profundity fragment that might be hidden in the martial emperor's secret treasure. It was the key to breaking through to the martial monarch stage for a peak void powerhouse. On the way back to Wood Peak, Chi Yu lifted up a hand and brought out 4 pieces of spirit fruit. These 4 spirit fruits here are the cultivation resources that we obtained from the sect resources after Wood Peak became the first peak of the Five Element sect. I have 2 pieces of 2 different types here. It's just right for the 2 of you to take 1 each. The 4 spirit fruits were composed of 2 different types, and there were 2 pieces each. One of was fully blue in color. It emitted a blue luster that gives off a faint fragrant scent. The other one was green in color. Its body was covered in red tiny lines that were interlaced with each other. Blue origin fruit, blood-stained fruit. The instant Duan Lingtian saw these 2 fruits, his eyes darkened instantly. A look of joy appeared on his face. After he had gone through the memories of the rebirth martial emperor, he immediately recognized the 2 spirit fruits. They were both spirit fruits that were exclusive to a void interpretation martial artist. The medicinal efficacy was not inferior to the origin-enhancing fruit that he and Huang Daniu had consumed before. Wow, everything is going smoothly according to my wish. Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up at once. 914 Chapter 915, The Secret Treasure of the Martial Emperor. Peak Master, these spirit fruits were issued by the sect. Huang Daniu asked curiously when he took the 2 spirit fruits. Then, does this mean that the other peaks would get them too? Of course, Chi Yu nodded his head. However, the benefits that the other peaks get are not as good as ours. After all, we're the first peak of the Five Element sect. This time, the sect elders have spent quite a huge amount of money when they went to purchase them. They managed to bid for 10 spirit fruits that are exclusively for void interpretation martial artists. These 10 spirit fruits are distributed according to the 5 peaks ranking. Wood Peak is the first peak, so we get 4. Gold Peak is the second peak, so they get 3, the Fire Peak gets 2 because they're the third peak, and the Water Peak, which is also the 4th peak, gets only 1. As for Earth Peak, since they're at the bottom, they get nothing at all. Chi Yu finished in one breath. What? Upon hearing Chi Yu's words, Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu could not hide their shock. The Earth Peak didn't even get 1. Yes, Chi Yu nodded his head before sighing. Speaking of that, the current situation that Earth Peak is in is exactly the same situation that Wood Peak was in for the past 2 decades. No wonder all of the peaks in the Five Element sect were trying so hard to get a place in front, and nobody was willing to be in the bottom. It turns out that the competition among the 5 peaks in the Five Element sect is actually this intense. Duan Lingtian inhaled as he muttered to himself. Although he already knew that the competition between the 5 peaks of the Five Element sect was intense, he did not think it would be this intense to the point that it could even be described with the word horrifying. No matter what, our Wood Peak will be the first peak of the Five Element sect for the next 3 years. Wood Peak will be the first to get our hands on all the goodies no matter what kind of sect resources they have. Chi Yu smiled. Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu nodded their heads as a smile appeared on their faces as well. With these spirit fruits, I'm sure you'll be able to raise your cultivation base to another level in the shortest time possible. 2 weeks later, 20 young disciples, including you two, will follow the peak masters of the 5 peaks and leave the Five Element sect. Chi Yu cast a glance at the spirit fruits in Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu's hands as he slowly said. Peak Master, the sect is making such a huge preparation. Where exactly are we going in 2 weeks' time? Huang Daniu asked with a confused look on his face. Chi Yu, the Peak Master of Wood Peak, could not help but turn glum as he said, well, you'll find out where it is 2 weeks later. You must hurry and seize this time to cultivate and improve your strength as much as possible. You'll only be able to survive in that place by increasing your strength. He was reminding Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniu through his words that the place that they were about to go in 2 weeks' time would be life-threatening. What? Horror dawned on Huang Daniu's face instantly. It had never crossed his mind that the place that they would be going in 2 weeks' time would be this dangerous. Duan Lingtian, on the other hand, was very calm. He was so calm that it was a little startling. Naturally, he was so calm because he already knew where they would be going in 2 weeks. The place that they were going was the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. It was full of opportunities inside, but at the same time, it contained danger as well. However, compared to the danger that was hidden in the place, the greatest threat was the young powerhouses who would be entering the place with them. After all, the people who would be entering the Martial Emperor's secret treasure this time was not only limited to the people from the Five-Element sect. As far as Duan Lingtian knew, the 4 major forces of the southern area of the northern desert would be going as well. The Skywolf Fort, Blade Sect, Empyrean Temple, and Emotion Severing Sect. The reason why the Skywolf Fort organized the martial competition of the 10 dynasties and picked the most outstanding young talent among the 10 dynasties was due to the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Then, the Blade Sect, Empyrean Temple, and the Emotion Severing Sect successively arrived at Skywolf Fort as well, forcing Skywolf Fort to share their yields by taking away many of the young talents that came from the 10 dynasties. Originally, Duan Lingtian wanted to join the Blade Sect. However, who knew that halfway through his journey something happened, and he got hunted by the Skywolf Fort people. After the Devilseal Tablet's abnormal change, he was unconscious and was thus sent to the eastern side of the northern desert. It led to him eventually joining Wood Peak of the Five-Element sect by coincidence. No matter what, I do owe the Five-Element sect a debt of gratitude. If it wasn't for the Five-Element sect, I would not have the chance to enter the profound assimilation formation and obtain such a huge breakthrough. Although I might get similar treatment if I went to the Blade sect, I'm enjoying all the treatment from the Five-Element sect after all. Duan Lingtian's heart jolted. Due to this reason, when I enter the Martial Emperor's secret treasure, I'll help the Five-Element sect and Wood Peak obtain the things that they want, apart from the few treasures that I'm going to keep for myself. This can also be considered as me repaying my debts to them, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Qi Yu was still staring at Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniyu. After he had told them that the place that they were going in 2 weeks would be quite dangerous, his gaze did not leave the two of them. He could see that Huang Daniyu's face was filled with horror, and Duan Lingtian had a calm expression on his face. The contrast between the two of them was extremely huge. At this moment, the good impression that Qi Yu had of Duan Lingtian immediately rose up a few notches. Unfortunately, neither Wood Peak nor the Five-Element sect will be able to tie Duan Lingtian down. Otherwise, in the future, the Five-Element sect would definitely be able to march towards glory under his guidance. Qi Yu thought about this and sighed. Very soon, the 3 of them went back to Wood Peak. After Qi Yu bade Duan Lingtian and Hu Daniyu goodbye, he immediately left. Duan Lingtian. At this moment, Huang Daniyu, who was lost in his thoughts, finally regained his senses and looked at Duan Lingtian. I noticed that you seemed very calm during the journey back. The Peak Master just said that the place that we'll go in 2 weeks is life-threatening. Aren't you worried? In the end, Huang Daniyu could not help but voice out his own concern. Worried? What's there to be worried about? Duan Lingtian laughed and shook his head. Then, his eyes darkened instantly as he muttered to himself, how can you catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's lair? How can you catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's lair? Although Duan Lingtian's voice was not loud, Huang Daniyu could still hear him clearly. A light flashed across his eyes as he asked with a smile on his face, Duan Lingtian, is there something you know that I'm not aware of? Looks like you're actually quite smart. Just from my 12 short words, you immediately deduced that I know something you're not aware of, Duan Lingtian scolded jokingly as he laughed. Duan Lingtian, Peak Master refused to say anything. Don't tell me you're not going to tell me as well. Huang Daniyu stared at Duan Lingtian with eager eyes. His face was filled with anticipation. I remember earlier, somebody actually showed off in front of me. He said that his concept had risen by 3 levels after coming out from the profound assimilation formation, and I can't compare to him at all because mine only rose by 2 levels. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes as he looked at Huang Daniyu with an indifferent smile. Huang Daniyu could not suppress the wry smile that crept up his face. He felt like he had dug his own grave earlier. Slightly startled, Huang Daniyu said with a pitiful face, Duan Lingtian, why are you so petty? If I'm not mistaken, the place that we're going to with the Peak Masters in 2 weeks is the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Naturally, Duan Lingtian would not care about such petty things. When he saw Huang Daniyu with a pitiful expression on his face, Duan Lingtian no longer teased him and proceeded to tell him about the things that he knew. The martial emperor's secret treasure. Upon hearing this, Huang Daniu was taken aback. After he regained his senses, he narrowed his eyes immediately. A martial emperor powerhouse. To him, this only existed in rumors. However, the ferociousness of a martial emperor powerhouse was definitely unquestionable. After all, a martial emperor powerhouse stood at the peak of the Cloud Continent. A secret treasure that was left behind by such a powerhouse would definitely not be a simple one. Huang Daniu's breathing suddenly quickened. After a long while, he finally relaxed. He stared at Duan Lingtian as he asked, "Duan Lingtian, are you sure?" "What, you still don't believe me?" Duan Lingtian laughed as he shook his head. "Come on, think about it yourself. Why do you think the five-element sect's senior officials would suddenly activate the profound assimilation formation and help elevate our strengths? Obviously, it's because they want us to help them search for something at the martial emperor's secret treasure." Huang Daniu became silent. However, an intense brilliance could be seen gleaming in his eyes as he muttered to himself, "Wow, I really can't wait to go there. There must be a lot of great things in the martial emperor's secret treasure, right?" Right now, he appeared like a completely different person compared to the Huang Daniu who had a look of dread on his face earlier. As the saying went, humans die in pursuit of wealth while birds die in pursuit of food. This proverb was the most suitable to describe Huang Daniu currently. "Alright, let's go back and cultivate first." Duan Lingtian woke Huang Daniu who was still daydreaming. "We still have 2 more weeks to go. Do your best in breaking through to the 7th level void interpretation. Otherwise, you'll suffer quite a lot when we face the other young powerhouses from the other sects." "There are other sects as well." Huang Daniu who had regained his senses was dumbfounded. "Of course," Duan Lingtian stated as a matter of fact, "do you really think the greatest danger lies in the martial emperor's secret treasure? The real danger does not lie in the secret treasure but in the other young powerhouses instead. When you enter the secret treasure, even if you manage to get your hands on a treasure, you'll need to have the ability to protect it, you know. Otherwise, everything you've done will be in vain because it'll end up in the hands of others." As he reached the end of his sentence, his tone became much more serious. Upon hearing that, Huang Daniu inhaled deeply and nodded his head solemnly. "I got it." "Alright, that's great, let's go then." Duan Lingtian bade Huang Daniu farewell and continued to make his way to the 3-story pavilion situated on the mountainside in the distance. That was the place where they were currently staying. "Duan Lingtian, after I've given some serious thought to it, I feel like something is not quite right. Why must the sect's senior officials bring us, the young disciples, to the martial emperor's secret treasure? Wouldn't it be easier if they just bring those elders there?" As if he was reminded of something, Huang Daniu frowned before continuing, "The elders who are much older are more powerful than us. If we go, we'll be like cannon fodders before the older powerhouses from the other sects. What if I tell you that there's an age restriction to enter the martial emperor's secret treasure?" Duan Lingtian patiently explained and answered Huang Daniu's questions. 915 Chapter 916, 9th Level Void Interpretation. Age restriction, how does that work? Huang Daniu was puzzled. You must have heard of the age measuring pearl, right? As long as an inscription formation is made using the age measuring pearl as the ingredient, coupled with a few other inscriptions, it can easily set the age restriction to a certain age group and restrict them from passing through the gate that's shrouded by the inscription formation, Duan Lingtian explained patiently. "Oh, so that's how it is." Huang Daniu suddenly saw the picture much more clearly. At the same time, he asked curiously, "Then, in this case, the secret treasure that the martial emperor left behind has such a restriction set by the inscription formation?" "Yes," Duan Lingtian nodded his head. "What's the age limit?" Huang Daniu asked inquisitively. 40 years old, Duan Lingtian replied. 40 years old, so, that's to say only the younger martial artists can enter this place. Ah, no wonder. Huang Daniu finally understood. As he recalled Duan Lingtian's words from earlier, he started to feel a tiny bit of pressure. The pressure pressed down on him so much that he began to feel a little out of breath. "Then let us hurry back and cultivate now. At that time, I'm sure many battles will break out with all the young powerhouses from the other major sects also entering the martial emperor's secret treasure." The moment these words left Huang Daniu's mouth, he did not even wait for Duan Lingtian to react before he turned into a flash of lightning and entered the 3-story pavilion that was situated on the mountainside. He disappeared from Duan Lingtian's eyes in an instant. This fellow, Duan Lingtian was startled by Huang Daniu's reaction. He could not help but let out a bitter laugh and return to his own bedroom at the 3-story pavilion as well. The moment he reached his room, he sat cross-legged on the bed. Without wasting any time, he proceeded to shove the 2 spirit fruits into his mouth one by one. The spirit fruits turned into cooling sap before it flowed down his throat into his body. 2 different spirit fruits had different medicinal efficacy. If it was any other ordinary martial artist, he would definitely not be as daring as Duan Lingtian was and swallow 2 different spirit fruits in a go. After all, it would be easy for the medicinal efficacies of the spirit fruits to clash with each other. If the medicinal efficacies clashed with each other, a strong wave of power would appear and erupt inside the body. It would cause great harm to the body's meridians and internal organs. The best scenario would be him going berserk, and the worst scenario would be death. Duan Lingtian was certainly someone that could not be easily compared to an ordinary martial artist. For this reason, he did not need to worry that the 2 spirit fruits' medicinal efficacies would clash with each other to compete for the right of way. This was because there was another medicinal efficacy hidden in his body that was multiple times greater and more tyrannical than the 2 spirit fruits. The medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill. As expected, when the 2 spirit fruits' medicinal efficacies merged with Duan Lingtian's origin energy, a wave of medicinal efficacy that was a lot more powerful appeared instantly just as the 2 spirit fruits were about to clash and compete for dominance. The moment the medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill noticed the 2 spirit fruits, it immediately surged out of his dantian like it was high on steroids. The moment the rebirth pill's tyrannical medicinal efficacy merged with the origin energy, it prompted the origin energy to rush towards the 2 spirit fruits' medicinal efficacies just as they were about to collide with each other. It smashed into the 2 spirit fruits immediately. Wham! The origin energy that was catalyzed by the rebirth pill's medicinal efficacy, and the origin energy that was catalyzed by the 2 spirit fruits' medicinal efficacies immediately converged. The rebirth pill took the initiative and started to go on a rampage in Duan Lingtian's body. In that instance, all Duan Lingtian could feel was the trembling of the meridians in his body. Even his internal organs had started to tremble as well. Without any hesitation, Duan Lingtian hurriedly calmed himself down with rapt attention. The 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Sword Dragon Form. Along with Duan Lingtian's quiet cultivation, the origin energy that was wreaking havoc in his body began to go back on track and began to operate based on the mental cultivation method of the 7th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, the Sword Dragon Form. With this speed, I'll be able to make a breakthrough to the 8th level void interpretation in no time. Feeling the origin energy that was swiftly flowing in his body like waves of tempestuous tsunamis, Duan Lingtian felt a jolt in his heart. He was completely overjoyed. Previously, with the help of Nangong Chen's spiritual energy, the overbearing medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill had catalyzed his origin energy and allowed him to enter the 7th level void interpretation. Not only that, it had also led him to the bottleneck leading up to the 8th level void interpretation. This time, with the 2 spirit fruits' medicinal efficacy in his body, the tyrannical rebirth pill's medicinal efficacy once again entered his system. Although it was not as fast as the last time, the speed was not slow at all. Moreover, other than the rebirth pill's medicinal efficacy, the medicinal efficacies from the 2 other spirit fruits continued to flow into his origin energy and merged with it. Wham! It did not take too long before Duan Lingtian discovered the origin energy in his body that was like a ferocious tsunami had breached the bottleneck. It successfully helped him in breaking through to the 8th level void interpretation. The second the 8th level void interpretation was broken through, and the origin energy in Duan Lingtian's body also began to undergo a thorough transformation in terms of quality. What a powerful origin energy! After he had broken through to the 8th level void interpretation, Duan Lingtian was completely taken by surprise. He was absolutely delighted. At the same time, the origin energy that was catalyzed by the rebirth pill continued to flow swiftly. It swept across the meridians in his body in a regular pattern, helping him to further improve. Time continued to pass by quietly. Duan Lingtian forgot about the time as he cultivated. However, he could still clearly feel the changes in his body. Since he had made his breakthrough to the 8th level void interpretation, the tyrannical medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill continued to guide the other 2 spirit fruits' medicinal efficacies and cultivated based on the mental cultivation method of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique's 7th form, the Sword Dragon Form. It was as if it did not know what exhaustion was. After God knew how long, Duan Lingtian could sense clearly that the bottleneck that was leading up to the 9th level void interpretation had appeared as well. After another period of God knew how long, he once again felt that the origin energy that was rolling out of his meridians had rapidly broken through the bottleneck that led up to the 9th level void interpretation as well. Wham! A light sound resonated in his body, causing Duan Lingtian to open his eyes abruptly. Instantly, happiness and excitement filled his face. It's a breakthrough. It's the 9th level void interpretation. As the milky white origin energy around Duan Lingtian's body filled the air, the heaven and earth energy above his head whirled and converged into a clear heaven and earth phenomenon. It was a total of 120 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. It told everyone that his cultivation base was currently at the 9th level void interpretation. Without warning, the origin energy around Duan Lingtian gave a wild jerk before it suddenly dissipated without a trace. Barf! Almost instantly, Duan Lingtian's eyes narrowed, and his body shuddered as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood was splashed all over the floor next to the bed like an eye-catching blooming red rose. There was no time for him to wipe the blood off the corner of his mouth. Duan Lingtian inhaled deeply and closed his eyes again. The 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Sword Dragon Form. At this moment, Duan Lingtian was hurriedly cultivating the mental cultivation method as he redirected the restless origin energy to the right path again. He feared that he would once again be injured by it. Previously, he forgot to continue directing the restless origin energy in his body because he was caught up in trying to test the newly broken through origin energy. Due to this, it went out of control and ran amok in his body, injuring his internal organs as a result. The medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill is already tyrannical. Coupled with the medicinal efficacies of the 2 spirit fruits, it's not something that my body can easily handle, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. However, Duan Lingtian also discovered that there was not much left of the 2 spirit fruits' medicinal efficacies after they had successfully helped him with 2 breakthroughs. It appeared that they would run out very soon. After who knew how long, Duan Lingtian finally noticed that the 2 spirit fruits' medicinal efficacies had finally been exhausted. Although they were already exhausted, he still could not retract the rebirth pill's medicinal efficacy. It was still propelling the origin energy forward. After a while, Duan Lingtian noticed that his cultivation base had been raised again. The bottleneck leading to the void transformation had also appeared as well. Wham! The tyrannical medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill propelled the origin energy. After it had run a cycle in Duan Lingtian's body based on the mental cultivation method of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Sword Dragon Form, it proceeded to slam against the bottleneck. The bottleneck trembled but there was no sign of it being broken. Wham! 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 With the impetus from the rebirth pill's tyrannical medicinal efficacy, the origin energy seemed to not know exhaustion as it slammed at the final bottleneck of the void interpretation again and again. The bottleneck that showed no sign of being broken at first began to ease up. In the end, there were a few times where it was nearly smashed open. Wham! The origin energy charged forward and pounded hard at the bottleneck once again. The bottleneck eased up for a moment. Although it seemed like it was about to be broken, it was still not broken as it stood firmly on the spot. Just one more time will do. Duan Lingtian inhaled deeply. Unfortunately, he started to notice with regret that the origin energy that was being propelled by the tyrannical medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill had started to slow down after making half a cycle in his body. The overbearing medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill left as quickly as it came. In just a blink of an eye, it scurried away and hid in his dantian again. Let's try again, Duan Lingtian smiled bitterly. At the same time, he proceeded to push the origin energy by himself so that it could complete the other half cycle and continue to charge towards the bottleneck that led up to the void transformation. However, the bottleneck that had already eased up only quivered a little, but it did not break at all. Compared to the origin energy that was being propelled by the rebirth pill's overbearing medicinal efficacy, the origin energy that Duan Lingtian propelled by himself was so weak that it was like it had just gone through a long period of starvation. Just a little bit. Even without the tyrannical medicinal efficacy of that rebirth pill, I'm sure I'll be able to break through and enter the first level void transformation after 10 or 100 cycles. Duan Lingtian thought to himself before he continued to propel his origin energy to make the breakthrough by himself. After a short while, Duan Lingtian had managed to make another 5 to 6 cycles by propelling his own origin energy. Although the bottleneck kept easing up, Duan Lingtian's origin energy could not break it at all. Duan Lingtian, just as he was about to continue, a familiar voice rang out from outside the house. It prompted him to return to his senses as he opened his eyes wide. Just a little bit more. With a wry smile, Duan Ling Tian got down from the bed and went forward to open his room door. When he saw the young man outside, he asked, Chen Wei, what brings you here? The person standing outside the door was none other than Chen Wei, Ke Zheng's direct disciple. Originally, it was because he met Ke Zheng and his disciple in Drift Cloud Town that prompted him to follow the two of them here to the Five-Element sect. Speaking of that, it was indeed fortunate that he encountered Ke Zheng and Chen Wei. 916 Chapter 917, A Gloomy Huang Danyu. The Peak Master asked me to get you and Danyu, Chen Wei smiled. The Peak Master's looking for us. Duan Ling Tian was startled. Had it been 2 weeks already? Yes, Chen Wei nodded. We're all waiting for you and Danyu. Once the both of you are ready, we'll make our way to Gold Peak to meet with the other 4 Peak Masters and their young disciples. Are you going too? Duan Ling Tian was surprised. It's not just me. There are another 3 Wood Peak disciples who'll be coming along too, Chen Wei smiled. Although I've no idea where we are headed, 6 of us are allowed to participate since Wood Peak is the first peak of the Five-Element sect. The quota for rest of the peaks is not as many as ours. To be honest, that's not bad at all. Wood Peak is allowed to bring 6 people, and the other peaks are not allowed to. Duan Ling Tian raised his brows. It had never crossed his mind that there would be so many people from Wood Peak coming along. At the same time, he was curious about how many people were allowed to come along from the other peaks. Yes, Chen Wei nodded his head again. This time, the number of people allowed to come along is allocated based on the 5 peaks ranking. Wood Peak is the first peak, so we can bring 6 people, Gold Peak is the second peak, and they can bring 5 people, Fire Peak, which is also the third peak, can bring 4 people, and Water Peak can bring 3 people because they're the 4th peak, and finally, the Earth Peak which is the last peak can only bring 2 people. Chen Wei said in one breath. This means that this time, there'll be a total of 20 young disciples going with the 5 peak masters. Duan Ling Tian raised his brows and muttered to himself. I'll call Danyu, and we'll meet with Peak Master and the rest after that. After he had told Duan Ling Tian this, Chen Wei proceeded to the bottom story of the 3-story pavilion and knocked on Huang Danyu's door to call him out. When Huang Danyu came out of his room, his face was ruddy, and he was in a very good mood. After Huang Danyu greeted Chen Wei, he immediately shifted his glance to Duan Ling Tian who was hovering in the air. He grinned as he asked confidently, Duan Ling Tian, shall we have a practice match? Upon hearing Huang Danyu's words, Duan Ling Tian narrowed his eyes and asked curiously, how do you want to do it? How about we do it like this? I won't borrow the earth energy, and you're not allowed to use the wind concept. Let us battle without our weapons. How about that? Huang Danyu's eyes were gleaming brightly, he was itching for a fight. Danyu, you dare to challenge me, huh? Looks like your breakthrough this time must be quite impressive, Duan Ling Tian smiled. So, do you dare or not? A bright smile crept up on Huang Danyu's face. His tone was full of provocation. Why not? However, I think it's better if we go slightly further away. Let's not disturb little Zan's cultivation, Duan Ling Tian answered without fear. At the same time, he looked at the master bedroom in the 2nd story of the 3-story pavilion. A hint of warmth swept across his eyes. Without any warning, he flew out and made his way to the distant horizon. Duan Ling Tian gradually turned into a small black dot before Huang Danyu and Chen Wei's eyes. They were both hovering in the sky. As expected of you, Duan Ling Tian. What a straightforward person. The smile on Huang Danyu's face turned wider. All the same, he flew out and followed Duan Ling Tian. These two fellows, the peak masters waiting for the both of you, Chen Wei smiled wryly and shook his head before following their footsteps as well. In the sky, Duan Ling Tian and Huang Danyu stood across each other as they stared directly into each other's eyes. Their bodies were emanating an intense battle aura as if it was about to explode at any time. Huang Danyu glared at Duan Ling Tian. The atmosphere was tensed as if he was facing a great enemy. As for Duan Ling Tian, he appeared very calm and collected. His gaze was tranquil as if he did not see Huang Danyu as a threat to himself at all. Naturally, in his opinion, he really did not see Huang Danyu as a threat at all. When Huang Danyu first came out of his room, his keen spiritual energy immediately probed Huang Danyu's cultivation and found out that he was at the 8th level void interpretation. 8th level void interpretation with a 9th level intermediate earth concept. This was Huang Danyu's current strength. Danyu, bring it on, Duan Ling Tian smiled. Huang Daniu saw how at ease Duan Lingtian was at the moment. It was apparent that Duan Lingtian did not think too highly of him. With his eyes narrowed, he warned in a deep voice, "Duan Lingtian, you better be careful. I'm no longer the Huang Daniu from 2 weeks ago." "Bring it on." Duan Lingtian nodded his head. The smile on his face did not waver at all. When Huang Daniu saw this, his face darkened instantly. Although Duan Lingtian was his friend, he could not suppress the anger that was rising from his heart upon seeing Duan Lingtian's low regard for him. He could not contain his temper anymore. "Ah!" Without any warning, Huang Daniu roared out loud. The origin energy on his body instantly burst out and merged with the earth concept that was rolling out. It transformed into waves of khaki energy. A small part of the khaki energy solidified into form beneath his feet, forming a thick stone platform. Boom! The moment the stone platform appeared, Huang Daniu's legs leapt up like a running cheetah before he landed on the stone platform. He cracked the stone platform into pieces before it was turned into dust by the vast energy. In the next moment, a gust of vast rolling air blasted out and transformed into a hurricane that blew in all directions with the cracked stone platform in the center. It was so windy that Chen Wei, who was standing at the side, could not help but squint his eyes as well. The robe on Chen Wei's body began to billow from the strong wind. At this moment, Chen Wei could not help but narrow his eyes when he saw Huang Daniu's blurry figure charging towards Duan Lingtian. He was stunned for a moment. Since when did Daniu become so strong? Before Chen Wei could make out the scene in front, he immediately saw the 210 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons that appeared above Huang Daniu's head. He gaped in astonishment. Without any spirit weapon, he managed to display 210 ancient horned dragon silhouettes. He knew very well what this meant. A martial artist who was at the 8th level void interpretation could easily demonstrate the 9th level void interpretation concept. A martial artist who was at the 9th level void interpretation could easily demonstrate the 8th level void interpretation concept too. If another middle-aged powerhouse from Wood Peak demonstrated this kind of strength, he would not be surprised at all. However, the person who was demonstrating this strength at this moment was none other than Huang Daniu. The Huang Daniu who only demonstrated the strength of 6th level void interpretation cultivation base with a 6th level void interpretation concept almost a month ago. Compared to the Huang Daniu from before, the Huang Daniu now had completely transformed into another person. It gave him a strange and unfamiliar feeling. Wham! Before he even regained his senses, another loud noise resonated in the air. At the same time, an even more terrifying flurry of airwaves swept out and set off a hurricane. It blew and forced him to retreat a few meters back. What had just happened? Chen Wei opened his eyes with a great effort. Soon, he noticed the two figures that had clashed in the distance. At this moment, the two of them were each punching out a fist. Originally, the two people in front could be considered as his acquaintances, but right now, he felt like he had only just met these two people for the first time. Other than the huge, tall young man who had 210 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons above his head, the other purple-clad young man had another 220 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons above his head. The strength of 220 ancient horned dragons. A martial artist who was at the 9th level void interpretation who possessed a 9th level void interpretation concept. Duan Lingtian, Chen Wei was so shocked that his mouth was wide open. When he saw the purple figure in the distance, he was completely taken aback. He was unable to recover his senses for a long time. Wham! Another loud sound reverberated in the air, and it took Chen Wei by surprise. He could not help but shudder at the sound. He could clearly see the dense purple thunderbolts that were intertwined with Duan Lingtian's fist swept out in the sky and easily overrode the khaki energy that surrounded Huang Daniu's fist. In the next second, Duan Lingtian's body leaned forward. As for Huang Daniu, he was sent flying by that one fist like an arrow that left the bowstring. Barf! Huang Daniu who was sent flying was completely flushed in the face. The vital energy and blood in his body swelled up, and he immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. A moment later, Huang Daniu finally managed to brace himself after being sent flying several dozens of meters away. His injury finally healed more or less after he took the wound-curing medicine. Naturally, this was also because Duan Lingtian had shown a little mercy earlier. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Huang Daniu to suffer only minor injuries. Duan Lingtian, you freak! Monster! You've actually broken through to the 9th level void interpretation. Just with that 2 spirit fruits. Did they really contain so much medicinal efficacy? Huang Daniu, who had finally returned to his senses, could not help but scold loudly. However, as soon as he reached the end of his sentence, the volume of his voice lowered as well. He dared to challenge Duan Lingtian earlier because he thought he had understood the medicinal efficacy of the 2 spirit fruits that Qi Yu, the Peak Master of Wood Peak, had given them. In his opinion, Duan Lingtian's cultivation base had only managed to achieve a breakthrough to the 7th level void interpretation in the Battle of the 5 Peaks a month ago. Even if Duan Lingtian had completely absorbed and digested the 2 spirit fruits' medicinal efficacies, the most he could go up to was the 8th level void interpretation. It was impossible for him to make a breakthrough to the 9th level void interpretation. However, the strength that Duan Lingtian demonstrated today had made him deeply aware of how wrong and ridiculous his previous thoughts were. Did you think I didn't make a breakthrough to the 9th level void interpretation? When Duan Lingtian heard Huang Daniu's words, he could not help but be a little stunned. Of course, Huang Daniu replied gruffly, if I had known earlier that you've already made a breakthrough to the 9th level void interpretation, I would have never fought with you in the first place. I'm not a masochist, okay? As he said this, Huang Daniu turned glum immediately. When Duan Lingtian saw the glum look on Huang Daniu's face, he burst out laughing instantly. His laugh was as brilliant as the sun. Duan Lingtian, Daniu, when did you become so strong? Chen Wei flew forward and stared at them with his mouth agape. Your void interpretation concepts managed to make a breakthrough to the 9th level in the profound assimilation formation. And Duan Lingtian, you actually comprehended the thunder concept. Chen Wei was completely filled with curiosity and bewilderment at this moment. That's right, our concepts were broken through in the profound assimilation formation. However, my intermediate earth concept has been elevated to the 9th level in the profound assimilation formation. That's 3 freaking level of elevation, you know. Huang Daniu grinned. So, are you saying that you've now comprehended the 9th level intermediate earth concept? Chen Wei's eyes were as wide as saucers as he stared at Huang Daniu. His face was completely filled with amazement. Although he had heard that the profound assimilation formation was not something simple, it had never crossed his mind that its strength would be so terrifying to the extent that it raised Huang Daniu's 6th level intermediate earth concept 3 levels up in just a go. 917 Chapter 918, 4 hours. That's right, Huang Daniu looked very proud. I managed to raise my 6th level intermediate earth concept to the 9th level intermediate earth concept in the profound assimilation formation. As he said this, he looked at Duan Lingtian again. His smile turned even prouder as he continued, I'm better than Duan Lingtian in this aspect. His intermediate thunder concept was originally at the 7th level. Although he was elevated to the 9th level in the profound assimilation formation, it was only elevated 2 levels. When Duan Lingtian saw Huang Daniu bringing this matter up again to even the score with him, Duan Lingtian merely shook his head. He was too lazy to bother with him. I heard that the profound assimilation formation is not simple, but I never thought that it's actually this powerful. To the extent that it could elevate your void interpretation concept to the 9th level. Chen Wei exclaimed in envy. Then, he looked at Duan Lingtian again before smiling wryly. Duan Lingtian, I always thought that you've only comprehended the 3rd level intermediate wind concept. To my surprise, you've actually comprehended another 7th level thunder concept. Previously, like most people, he thought Duan Lingtian was so strong was because of his innate ability. If it was not for his innate ability, Duan Lingtian would probably not be a part of the young and outstanding disciples in the 5-element sect. However, right now, he was deeply aware of how stupid and ridiculous his previous thoughts were. Duan Lingtian really did conceal it well. Huang Daniu looked at Duan Lingtian. His eyes gleamed brightly as if he could see through everything. Right now, even if he demonstrates a 3rd concept other than the thunder and wind concept, I don't think he'll be surprised anymore. Upon hearing Huang Daniu's words, the corner of Duan Lingtian's mouth unknowingly twitched a little. Although he knew that Huang Daniu simply blurted that out without putting much thought into it, his heart could not help but jolt upon hearing them. He did indeed comprehend a 3rd void interpretation concept. Not only did he have a 3rd void interpretation concept, he had even comprehended a 4th void interpretation concept too. His earth and sword concepts were both at the void interpretation concept currently. However, Chen Wei did not take Huang Daniu's words seriously. In his opinion, with Duan Lingtian's age, it was already shocking enough that he comprehended 2 strong void interpretation concepts. It was impossible for him to comprehend a third void interpretation concept even if he was a variant. Your cultivation base. Chen Wei quickly swept a glance at Huang Daniyu before he looked at Duan Lingtian. His face was filled with curiosity. The elevation of our cultivation bases is actually thanks to the spirit fruits that Peak Master gave us. Those spirit fruits were the cultivation resources that the sect had given us, Huang Daniyu smiled. Chen Wei suddenly understood. The envy on his face became more prominent, but there were no hints of jealousy at all. He knew very well that the two of them deserved whatever they obtained. If it had not been for Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniyu, Wood Peak would never be able to get rid of the fate of being in the last place, let alone becoming the first peak of the five-element sect. If Wood Peak could not get rid of the destiny of being at the bottom, even if the sect had managed to obtain the spirit fruits, it would not be assigned to Wood Peak at all. Let's go. The Peak Master's waiting for us, Chen Wei told the two of them before flying away to the distance. Duan Lingtian nodded his head. Together with Huang Daniyu, they caught up to Chen Wei and flew away to the distance. Very quickly, Duan Lingtian met Qi Yu, the Peak Master of Wood Peak, again. Behind Qi Yu stood three other Wood Peak young disciples that were about 35 years old. It was apparent that they would be going to the Martial Emperor's secret treasure as well. Duan Lingtian stretched out his spiritual energy. In just a while, he found out the cultivation bases of the three other disciples. They were all at the 4th level void interpretation, just like how Chen Wei used to be. When Chen Wei had come to look for him earlier, he had noticed that Chen Wei's cultivation base had now entered the 5th level void interpretation. You're here. Upon seeing Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniyu, Qi Yu, who was usually calm, let out an unusual smile. Peak Master. Duan Lingtian and Huang Daniyu greeted Qi Yu with a smile before they proceeded to stand behind him. At this time, the three Wood Peak disciples who were hovering in the air behind Qi Yu greeted the two of them politely, Senior Brother Duan Lingtian, Senior Brother Huang Daniyu. It flattered them a little. After all, these three Wood Peak disciples were actually much older than the two of them. Let's go. Qi Yu guided the six of them and flew out at once, all the way towards Gold Peak. In just a while, they had already reached the sky outside of Gold Peak. There were already two groups of people gathered there, and they were standing across each other. When they saw Duan Lingtian and the other Wood Peak people, the two groups of people immediately looked over. They quickly fixed their gazes on two particular people from the Wood Peak group. Duan Lingtian and Qi Yu. When Duan Lingtian had first arrived at Wood Peak, he had defeated the direct disciple of a Wood Peak elder and even caused that elder to cripple his own cultivation base. Ever since then, Duan Lingtian's fame had already spread throughout the entire five-element sect. Later, during the Battle of the Five Peaks, Duan Lingtian became even more famous. He defeated the Nangong twins who were the strongest, prior to his own arrival to the five-element sect, in the five-element sect. He even obtained the first place for the individual and team battle in the Battle of the Five Peaks, and helped Wood Peak become the first peak of five-element sect. Presently, Duan Lingtian's reputation in the five-element sect could be compared to the midday sun. It even surpassed the Nangong twins from Gold Peak. Some of the five-element sect's disciples even secretly considered Duan Lingtian as the strongest powerhouse among the younger generation in the sect because he could overpower the Nangong twins from Gold Peak. Qi Yu, the Peak Master of Wood Peak, who had been quiet for so many years, suddenly launched a lightning attack in the Battle of the Five Peaks, inflicting serious injuries on Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak, twice. At that moment, the five-element sect's disciples who were present finally knew that Qi Yu, the person who was known as the second strongest powerhouse in the five-element sect, did not get his nickname for no reason. He indeed possessed such a strength. At that time, Qi Yu had also become the subject of discussion among the five-element sect's disciples. The two group of people were actually the members of Water and Earth Peak who had arrived earlier. Yu Fang and Tianji Yu, the Peak Masters for Water and Earth Peak, came forward and greeted Qi Yu with a smile. Peak Master Qi Yu. Peak Master Yu Fang, Peak Master Tianji Yu. Qi Yu greeted them one by one with a courteous smile. Duan Lingtian, who was standing at the side, swept a glance across the members of Water and Earth Peaks one by one. He noticed that other than the two Peak Masters, Yu Fang, and Tianji Yu, the two peaks had a total of 5 disciples added up together. There was a total of 3 members from Water Peak. Other than Tan Huan and the other female disciple whom he had seen twice previously, there was another female disciple among them. Earth Peak, on the other hand, only had 2 people, all of whom he was with. They were none other than Tianjin and the Earth Peak male disciple whom he had also seen twice previously. The number of the two peaks, young disciples added up together did not even exceed the number of disciples, including Duan Lingtian, that Wood Peak had. Suddenly, a Wood Peak disciple exclaimed in a deep voice, "Fire Peak is here." The people present, apart from Duan Lingtian and Qi Yu, immediately shifted their gazes to the 5 figures that were flying in their direction from the distance. These 5 people were headed by one person. The person who took the lead was an old man who was dressed in red. He was none other than Cha Bai, the Peak Master of Fire Peak. Behind Cha Bai were another 4 Fire Peak disciples. Among these 4 disciples, Hu Fei was leading them as they followed closely behind Cha Bai. "Since all of us are here, let us make our move." Suddenly, before Yu Fang and Tianji could greet Cha Bai, a loud voice resonated from Gold Peak's direction. It instantly attracted everyone's attention. Duan Lingtian looked towards the voice and saw 6 figures making their way in the air from Gold Peak. Among them was Guo Chong, the Peak Master of Gold Peak, who was also the sect leader of the 5-element sect, who was leading the group. Behind him were Nangong Chen and Nangong Yi, who followed closely behind. One was full of energy while the other was calm and collected. Both had graceful bearings. Behind the 2 of them were another 3 Gold Peak disciples. They were all young disciples who were around 35 years old. It was obvious that they were prepared to go to the Martial Emperor's secret treasure too. Sect leader. The moment Guo Chong made his appearance, the people from the other 4 peaks showed their respect. Some nodded their heads while some bowed. Most of them bowed down in salutation, with the exception of the 4 peak masters and Duan Lingtian, who merely nodded their heads. Duan Lingtian, who was standing among the 5-element sect's disciples, stood out like a sore thumb the moment all the other disciples bowed. If this was another person, Guo Chong would probably be slightly angered. However, when he discovered that the person was Duan Lingtian, his temper died down immediately. In his opinion, it could already be considered a blessing to the 5-element sect for Duan Lingtian, who was a variant, to temporarily join the sect. As for all the other unnecessary and elaborate formalities, Duan Lingtian had the qualifications to ignore them. "Let's go." Guo Chong nodded his head towards the crowd and announced loudly. The instant the words left his mouth, he led the 5 Gold Peak disciples and proceeded to fly towards the southwest direction. Due to the fact that he was watching out for the Gold Peak disciples, he deliberately slowed down his flying speed. "Let's go." This time, Qi Yu, Yu Fang, Tianji Yu and Cha Bai called out to their young disciples one by one and caught up with Gold Peak's people. They followed closely behind like a shadow. That Martial Emperor's secret treasure is in the southwest. As they flew all the way to the southwest, Duan Lingtian could not help but narrow his eyes as he murmured, "The direction is between the southern and western district of the northern desert, but it's closer to the 4 major forces of the northern desert's southern district. Southern district of the northern desert, ancient desert city, Skywolf Fort." Inside the fort, at an underground palace, 5 people stood before a high platform. They looked at the high platform before them that was shrouded in fog. The 5 people's eyes were gleaming brightly. "It's going to be 3 hours soon," the only middle-aged man among the 5 of them spoke in a low voice. "The profound assimilation formation is about to close, and the 9 of them will come out soon." The eyes of one of the old men among the group of 5 lit up immediately. With an eager look, he stared at the high platform that was shrouded in fog as if he was waiting for something. Time continued to pass quietly. "What's the matter? It has already been 4 hours, so why isn't the profound assimilation formation shutting off? This is a little illogical. Has something happened to the profound assimilation formation?" The 5 people present at the scene stood gazing at one another. They were baffled and did not know what to do. Their faces were completely filled with bewilderment. 918 Chapter 919, Ghost Flames Approach. The 5 people present were none other than the 5 Vice Fort Masters. The 5 Vice Force Masters were led by Luo Fu, and the other 4 were Meng Li, Ning Kan, Yu Kong and Feng Wei. Feng Wei was Luo Fu's disciple. He was also the only one in his middle age among the 5 Vice Fort Masters. The other 4 were old men that were over 70 years old. At this moment, all 5 of them had a glum look on their faces. They had a clear understanding of the profound assimilation formation. It could only run for 3 hours at the most, and it would automatically turn itself off after that. At that time, the individuals that were in the formation would come out, and the concept that they had comprehended would improve more or less. However, it had already been 4 hours currently, and the profound assimilation formation did not show any signs of shutting down at all. It was as if something had gone wrong. Their hearts were heavy due to the current situation. Don't tell me something really happened inside. Feng Wei's face was very gloomy. I don't think so. The profound assimilation formation is an inscription formation that was personally drawn by a martial emperor powerhouse. By right, there shouldn't be any problems at all. Luo Fu shook his head. His wise eyes were brimming with radiance when his gaze was trained on the high platform that was shrouded by fog. I think something that we're not aware of is happening inside. Quote. Although Meng Li, Ning Qian and Yu Kong did not speak a word at all, they were all staring at the profound assimilation formation on the high platform with utmost concentration. A hint of worry could be seen on their faces. Compared to the 5 Vice Fort Masters' restlessness outside of the profound assimilation formation, the inside was absolutely tranquil. 9 young talents were sitting cross-legged at different places while they quietly comprehended their concepts. Gusts of concept that had substantialized rose from the surroundings of the 9 young talents. They were either wind, fire, water, thunder or earth concepts. All 5 of these belonged to the nature concepts. There was another person whose body was entangled with a sword-shaped energy. It was the sword concept's materialized form. 8 of the young talents were sitting like a statue, there were no movements at all. Only one person could be seen sometimes frowning and sometimes relaxing. It was a white-clad young man who looked like he was just slightly over 30 years old. Although his eyes were closed, his face was unusually cold. Especially the black flame mark in between his eyebrows that could instill chill in people the moment they laid their eyes on it. At this moment, the black flame mark looked like it was alive as it burnt brightly. Elder Ghost, how did you do it? A voice echoed from the depth of the white-clad young man's mind. A hint of surprise could be heard in the voice. Inside the depth of the white-clad young man's mind, 2 orbs of vast concept energies that were similar to 2 clouds that were rolling constantly was situated near the solidified soul. One of the concept energy was green while the other one was red. They were the wind and fire concept respectively. Humph. At the same time, a cold, hoarse and ancient voice suddenly grunted in the white-clad young man's mind. It's only a mere inscription formation that was laid out by a martial monarch stage inscription master. Did you really think that it would be able to stop me, the ghost flame? Although the remnant of my soul is not as powerful as I was during my prime, it's still very easy for me to extract some concept energy from the profound assimilation formation and force it into your body, you know. If I'm still in my prime, it won't even be a problem for me to extract all the concept energy refined from the wind and fire concept fragments and insert them into your body, okay? Disdain could be heard in the hoarse and ancient voice as he said this. From his words, it was as if he looked down on the profound assimilation formation that the martial emperor had laid out. Yes, what a lousy martial emperor powerhouse. It's like trash compared to you, Elder Ghost. Flattery was apparent in this voice. Without any warning, the voice changed topic. Elder Ghost, how high would the 2 waves of concepts that you extracted be able to raise my wind and fire concepts to? The void transformation concept, the hoarse and old voice echoed again. V void transformation C concept. Elder Ghost, you're not joking, right? The other voice was filled with surprise. Ever since you've coincidentally gotten your hands on the Devilseal tablet fragment, when have I ever lied to you? The remnant of my soul lives in your body. The hoarse and ancient voice sounded slightly angry. No, of course not. Elder Ghost, please don't be offended by the words I said. I was just thinking about how incredible this is. I'm just too excited. The former voice was a bit alarmed. Humph. The ancient voice snorted again before it continued. Zishang, you lad. You must remember that the things that I can give you are much greater than your imagination. As long as you remember your promise to help me reconstruct my soul in the future, I'll definitely not treat you badly, the ancient voice echoed again. Yes, Zishang's voice hurriedly replied. He dared not slack at all. Alright, I'll pass the control of your body back to you now. You'll combine the 2 concept energies and your 2 concepts on your own. After the hoarse and ancient voice finished his sentence, it immediately died down. Meanwhile, Zishang sat cross-legged while the black mark between his brows disappeared without a trace. It was as if it was never there. The situation was very strange. Zishang opened his eyes slowly, a sharp gleam flashed across his eyes as he muttered to himself in a cold voice, Duan Ling Tian, when we meet again next, I'm going to give you a huge surprise. Even if Elder Ghost can't get rid of you on his own, I'm strong enough to destroy you. As long as I obtain the Devil Seal tablet from you, my future will definitely be very bright. Even the martial emperor powerhouses from the Cloud Continent will soon be squashed under my shoes. As he spoke to himself, an evil grin slowly crept up on his face. It took a while before his laughter finally died down. Zishang immediately closed his eyes again and proceeded to merge the two concept energies in the depth of his mind. A big flame rose up from around his body instantly. It brought gusts of blue winds with it. With the assistance from the wind, the fire raged and rose sharply. Time passed by quietly. 3 days had gone by in just a blink of an eye. It has already been 3 days and the profound assimilation formation is still not shutting down. In the underground palace of the Skywolf Fort's inner fort, Ninkan kept pacing back and forth beside the high platform that was shrouded in fog. His face could not hide the worry he felt for his direct disciple, Zishang. Since we've already waited for 3 days, we might as well wait for a little longer, Luo Fu, who was standing by the side, suddenly piped up. Although he said those words, there were still traces of concern in his eyes. His brows furrowed suddenly as if he could sense something. When he looked at the profound assimilation formation, he noticed that the high platform was still shrouded in fog. The fog suddenly whirled and looked like it was about to converge. The profound assimilation formation is about to shut down now. Ninkan stopped pacing instantly. The other 3 Skywolf Fort's Vice Fort Masters who were sitting cross-legged by the side as they cultivated also opened their eyes one by one. They stood up to watch the fog that continued to converge on the high platform together. In just a short while, the fog dissipated, and the 9 figures that were sitting cross-legged on the platform appeared in front of their eyes one by one. 8 young men and 1 young woman. If Duan Lingtian was here, he would recognize that young girl in just a glance. That was none other than Yi Ling, the strongest powerhouse among the young talents in Darking Dynasty whom he had met once in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. After the martial competition had ended, Yi Ling continued to stay in Skywolf Fort and received key training. Her current cultivation base was completely different to how it was before. Soon, the 9 people opened their eyes one after another and finally woke up. Ninkan first took a look at the white-clad young man who was his direct disciple, Zishang, before he asked eagerly, "Zishang, how's the progress of your wind concept?" "Master, Zishang did not disappoint you," Zishang smiled faintly. The energy beside him immediately whirled and continued to release waves of hot aura. In just a blink of an eye, a big flame rose up and enveloped his entire body. It made him look like a majestic and fiery giant. Whoosh! Meanwhile, the heaven and earth energy above the air whirled and gathered to form the heaven and earth phenomenon. Silhouettes of ancient horned dragons gradually solidified into form. 10, 20, 30, the number kept increasing. Under the astounded gaze of the crowd, the ancient horned dragons finally stopped increasing and stopped at 1 number. It's the strength of 200 ancient horned dragons. Luo Fu gasped and exclaimed. He was dumbfounded. The first level advanced fire concept. Zishang, why you've actually comprehended the void transformation. The void transformation concept. The other 8 young disciples of the Skywolf Fort immediately stood still as they stared at the 200 silhouettes of the ancient horned dragons in dismay. They were alarmed, and they were not able to recover from their shock for a long time. Zishang, why your fire concept was only at the void initiation before you entered the profound assimilation formation, right? Ninkan asked absent-mindedly. The void initiation concept. The moment the words left his mouth, the other 4 Vice Fort Masters was alarmed as well. It was only at the void initiation concept before he entered the profound assimilation formation, but it was raised to the void transformation concept the moment he stepped out of it. Did he skip the void interpretation concept? Yes, Zishang nodded. When he saw the dumbfounded expression on their faces and the look of horror in their eyes, he felt a burst of pleasure in his heart. He enjoyed this feeling a lot. In the next moment, his heart jolted as a flurry of green hurricane suddenly solidified around his body and merged with the burning flame. The flame instantly soared and rose up higher than before. At the same time, another 400 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons appeared in the sky above his head, followed by the addition of another 100 ancient horned dragons. The strength of 400 ancient horned dragons, T3rd level advanced wind concept. That strength of 100 ancient horned dragons is the power that was raised after he fueled the first level advanced fire concept with his wind concept. Something like the earth concept borrowing the earth energy. 919 Chapter 920, Feng Tianwu's elevation. The 5 Vice Fort Masters of Skywolf Fort stared in shock at the 700 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons that were above Zishang's head. Shock was the only emotion that they could feel at the moment. The 3rd level Advanced Wind concept was equal to the strength of 400 ancient horned dragons. The 1st level Advanced Fire concept was equal to the strength of 200 ancient horned dragons. Moreover, he also had the strength of another 100 ancient horned dragons after he fueled the fire concept with the wind concept. It came up to the strength of 700 ancient horned dragons after it was all added together. The 8 Skywolf Fort's disciples who were present were gaping. They did not recover their senses for a long period of time. After a while, one Skywolf Fort's disciple finally managed to regain his senses. He could not help but swallow hard before he murmured, "Didn't the Vice Fort Masters tell us that after entering the Profound Assimilation Fort, the lower levels of the Void Interpretation concept could rise 2 to 3 levels, but the high levels could only rise 1 or 2 levels?" As his speech reached this point, he turned to look at Zishang before he continued, but he. Perhaps something went wrong with the Profound Assimilation formation. I feel like I've been inside for more than 3 hours, so maybe our progress is as huge as Zishang as well. Another Skywolf Fort's disciple hastily adjusted his concept while he was speaking. Before I entered the Profound Assimilation formation, I've comprehended the 5th level Intermediate Thunder concept. If nothing went wrong, I should be able to reach the Void Transformation concept too. Everybody, including Zishang, immediately shifted their attention to the space above this Skywolf Fort's disciple. His heaven and earth energy was whirling and brewing above him as it gradually formed the heaven and earth phenomenon. A sneer could be seen on the corner of Zishang's mouth. Could this garbage be compared to him? In just a short while, silhouettes of ancient horned dragons began to appear above the Skywolf Fort's disciple. The number continued to increase before it finally stopped at 80. The strength of 80 ancient horned dragons that represented the 7th level Void Interpretation concept. 7th level Intermediate Thunder concept. How's that possible? When he saw the 80 silhouettes of the ancient horned dragon above himself, the Skywolf Fort's disciple turned glum instantly. This is far too different from Zishang's. At this moment, the remaining Skywolf Fort's disciples, including Yi Ling, proceeded to test and display their concepts one by one. In the end, they realized that among them, the biggest elevation was only an increase of 1 levels. One of the Skywolf Fort's disciples' 4th level Void Interpretation concept managed to rise to the 6th level Void Interpretation concept. Each and every gaze instantly fell on Zishang. All of them had an astonished and perplexed look. A proud smile could be seen on Zishang's face. He really enjoyed this kind of feeling very much. Unfortunately, my cultivation base is still a little bit far behind. I hope that I'll be able to make a breakthrough to the 7th Void Interpretation when I enter the Martial Emperor's secret treasure. Zishang thought to himself. Blade Sect. As one of the 4 major forces in the southern district of the Northern Desert, Blade Sect was located in 2 adjacent vast valleys. One of the 2 valleys were named Saber Valley. It was where the Saber Sect was located. The other was named Sword Valley, where the Sword Sect was located. In between the Saber and Sword Valleys, there was a hill that housed a succession of architectural complex. This complex was where the senior officials of Blade Sect usually stay and cultivate. In the palace on the hill, 5 people were standing before a high platform at the moment. The high platform was shrouded in fog. Among the 5 of them, 2 were old men while the other 3 were middle-aged men. If Duan Lingtian was here, he would be able to recognize the 3 middle-aged men with just a glance. They were none other than Sword 13, the Vice Sect Master of Sword Sect, Saber 5, the Vice Sect Master of Saber Sect, and Feng Wudao, the Elder of Sword Sect from Blade Sect. However, Feng Wudao was staring fixedly at the fog of the high platform with a glum look on his face at the moment. He was a little nervous. Sect Masters, Feng Wudao could not help but look at the 2 elderly men and said with a look of dismay, "The Profound Assimilation formation really will not harm a fire spirit body. By right it won't. Moreover, there has never been a case where an incident happened after the fire spirit body entered the Profound Assimilation formation." One of the tall and sturdy old men shook his head. "Don't worry. Since Tianwu, that little girl, has an innate spirit body, she'll only benefit from the Profound Assimilation formation that's filled with concept energy. No harm will come to her at all," another thin old man said. The 2 old men were the 2 sect leaders of Blade Sect. One ruled Saber Sect while the other ruled Sword Sect. Unfortunately, Tianwu, that little girl, can't consume any spirit fruit. Otherwise, she would have quite an accomplishment when she enters the martial emperor's secret treasure with the fire concept she comprehends in her shocking strength. Sword 13 let out a sigh. The moment Feng Wudao and the two old men heard this, they became quiet as well. Feng Tianwu had a remarkable comprehension in the fire concept, but her cultivation base was still only at the third level void interpretation. It was much more inferior compared to many other Blade Sect's disciples. If it wasn't for her remarkable fire concept, she would not even be qualified to enter the profound assimilation formation and enjoy the baptism of the several hundred concept fragments. It's going to be 3 hours soon. Blade 5 stood at the side, his eyes lit up immediately. He had an eager expression on his face as he looked at the profound assimilation formation before him that was shrouded on the high platform. Upon hearing Blade 5's words, the other 4 people immediately shifted their gazes towards the profound assimilation formation. A moment later, the fog on the high platform converged and revealed its true state. 10 young men and women were sitting cross-legged in various parts of the platform. After a while, they finally woke up one by one. Wooer. When Feng Wudao saw a figure that was slowly rising, a relieved and happy smile crept up on his face. The heart that was lifted high could finally be put down. Father. Upon hearing the voice, she looked at Feng Wudao as a smile appeared on that delicate face that was so beautiful that it could topple the world. I'm sorry for worrying you. It's all right as long as you're unharmed. Feng Wudao shook his head. At this moment, the heaven and earth energy in the sky swirled, and the sky started to change. All the other 9 Blade Sect's disciples, including Su Li, Long Yun, and Zhang Shouyang, demonstrated their concepts one after another. They mobilized their heaven and earth energy and formed the heaven and earth phenomenon. Their concepts were more or less elevated by 2 to 3 levels. Tian Wu, let us see how many levels your fire concept had risen up to. The thin old man looked at Feng Tianwu kindly. Yes, Sect Master. Upon hearing the Sect Master of Sword Sect's words, Feng Tianwu did not waste any time. The red robe on her body suddenly billowed. It resembled fire that was burning with great intensity. Su Li, you're really not interested in this Feng Tianwu at all. If you're not interested, your senior brother, I, will go ahead and court her. The green-clad young man standing beside Su Li was staring at Feng Tianwu with a great burning desire in his eyes. He was itching to make her his senior brother. Lian, I've told you before. Tianwu already has somebody she likes. Su Li frowned as he continued, and that person is somebody that you can't afford to offend. The one that you're speaking of is that guy who originally followed you here to our Blade Sect, yet halfway through the journey, he got hunted down by the Skywolf Fort people until he went missing. That Duan Ling Tian you mean? The green-clad young man laughed in disdain, let alone the fact that he might already be dead. I'm not afraid of him even if he's still alive. The first place in the martial competition of the 10 dynasties. Come on, that kind of rubbish martial competition is not even worth mentioning. Okay. Upon hearing the green-clad young man cursing Duan Ling Tian, Su Li's face darkened at once. His eyes gleamed coldly, and his fists were clenched tightly. However, he did not make any movements at all. Putting aside the fact that this green-clad young man had quite a reputable identity, just his strength alone far exceeded his own strength. A cultivation base at the 8th level void interpretation and a comprehension of the 9th level sword concept was not something that he could compare to. At this moment, nobody heard a word of the exchange between Su Li and that green-clad young man because everyone's attention was fixed upon Feng Tianwu. Swoosh. Meanwhile, waves of hot air swept out from around Feng Tianwu's body. It set off flurries of hot hurricanes that blew in all directions. Whoosh, 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 the raging hurricanes that brought about hot air made several Blade Sect's disciples, whose cultivation base was much lower, turn pale immediately. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Feng Tianwu was completely covered in flames that soared up to the sky. It served as a foil to the red long robe on her body and made her look like a fire elf. Whoosh! The heaven and earth energy swirled in the air followed by the emergence of the heaven and earth phenomenon. In a few moments, 100 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons appeared. Ninth level intermediate fire concept. When everyone saw the 100 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons above her, they immediately became terrified. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. They regained their senses quickly as horror dawned on their faces. They regained their senses so quickly because after the emergence of the 100 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons, another 100 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons appeared again in the sky as the flames continued to soar from Feng Tianwu's body. 200 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons appeared before everyone. First level advanced fire concept. Everyone, including the 2 sect leaders of saber and sword sects, could not help but narrow their eyes instantly. Their faces were filled with bewilderment. Before Feng Tianwu entered the profound assimilation formation, she seemed to have only comprehended the 5th level intermediate fire concept. However, after she came out from the profound assimilation formation, she had already comprehended the 1st level advanced fire concept. When they saw the 200 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons became 300 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons a moment later, everyone turned numb as they stared at the scene before their eyes with their mouths agape. 2nd level advanced fire concept? Su Li gasped. And no, it's not only 2nd level advanced fire concept. The number of ancient horned dragons is still increasing. Zhang Shouyang muttered. His eyes were as big as saucers. Indeed, the number of ancient horned dragons above Feng Tianwu's head was still increasing. The 300 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons soon became 400 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. Immediately afterward, it became 500 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. And it was still increasing. Everyone had gone completely numb without realizing it. Is this the fire spirit body? Don't tell me she absorbed all of the concept energy from the fire concept fragments that the profound assimilation formation managed to refine. Sword 13 was flabbergasted as he murmured to himself.